Will the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Wednesday, May 6, 2020, please come to order? For the benefit of all of us, as this is our second time hosting a virtual planning and zoning meeting, our procedures will be as follows. When you first enter the meeting, you will be in the virtual waiting room until the meeting host admits you, which will take approximately 5 minutes prior to the posted start time of the meetings. 2, please be aware that your camera, if you have one, and your microphone will be muted by the meeting host when you are entering the meeting. You can turn on your camera at any time so you can be seen by others when and if you choose to. In order to run an efficient, orderly meeting in this new virtual environment, unless stated otherwise by the meeting chairman during the meeting host will keep everyone other than the commission members muted. You will be still able to hear everything said by the commission members, even if you are muted and or your camera is not on. There will be the opportunity for public comment during the hearings, at which time public participants will be unmuted. 3, the secretary will read the call of the meeting.
I don't know what you did. I don't know.
According to Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B. 4, during the public hearing, the applicant will be invited to present the application, explaining to the commission and others what is being requested. The meeting host will share all related documents on the screen as needed. In addition, all applications, supporting materials for each application on the agenda are available through the public meeting calendar page on the town website, www.ci.guilford.ct.us, also through a direct link on the planning and zoning page. 5, comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. There will be clarifying questions from commissioners. 6, there will then be the opportunity for clarifying questions from the audience. Please raise your hand through the Zoom platform and wait to be called on and unmuted. Should this feature malfunction, please send a chat to the commission, ask them to be called on. First, those who wish to support the application may come forward. Second, those who oppose the application may come forward. As this is a public hearing, it must be recorded. It is necessary for speakers to identify themselves each time they speak by stating their name and address. 7, the applicant will then have the opportunity to address any questions or concerns raised by the public or commissioners. 8, once the public hearing is closed, the applicant is free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearing and regular meeting, during which the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as the decision of the commission and has the right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. 9, decisions of the meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Planning and Zoning Department at 203-453-8039 or by emailing planning.zoning@ci.guilford.ct.us after 9 a.m. 10, all voting actions taken tonight by commissioners will be by a roll call vote. All commissioners and staff will identify themselves for the record before speaking. Seated this evening are the following members, and I'll ask you to just do a quick wave. Sean Cosgrove.
Hello.
There you go. Richard Wallace.
Good evening.
Thank you, Richard. Scott Edmond.
Oh.
Very good. Jamie Stein.
Here.
Thank you. I'm Phil Johnson. Matt Yerzinski.
Hello.
Very good. And I think that's it. Is Frank here?
No.
No, Frank? Okay. Will the secretary now read the legal notice?
Yes. Notice is hereby given that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on the following applications on April 15th. Is that the right date? At 7:30 p.m. Due to COVID-19 situation, this meeting will be conducted through a web and phone meeting only. Attendees are advised to not go to the regular community center location because a physical meeting will not take place. See below sign in information to Zoom meeting. Meeting ID 726-026-676. Password 674854. Shall I read the numbers?
I don't think that's necessary.
Russell Campaign, CK Architects, on behalf of Wendy and Bill Zabel, 38 Fair Street, South Fair Street, map 32, lots 55, zone R1, special permit to build a 24 by 26 foot barn. Jeffrey Rice, 40 East Bear House Road, map 93, lots 9-108, zone R8, special permit to build a 30 by 32 foot barn. Town of Guilford Parks and Recreation Department, Chaffinch Island Park, Chaffinch Island Road, map 23, lots 5, MR1, coastal area management and site plan construction of an accessible walkway to a picnic and viewing area. Town of Guilford Parks and Recreation Department, Calvin Pool, 280 South Union, map 41, lot 18, zone R3, coastal area management and site plan for construction of a 12 by 16 foot addition to an existing athletic equipment shed. Copies of these applications are available for inspection on the town's website, www.ci.guilford.ct.us, or by appointment only at the Planning and Zoning Office. Dial 203-453-8039 for assistance. At this hearing, persons may attend by either phone or web connection and shall be heard. Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order 7B, any materials relevant to matters on the agenda, including but not limited to materials related to specific applications, if applicable, shall be submitted to the agency a minimum of 24 hours prior and posted to the agency's website for public inspection prior to, during, and after the meeting, and any exhibits to be submitted by members of the public shall, to the extent feasible, be submitted to the agency a minimum of 24 hours prior to the meeting and posted to the agency's website for public inspection prior to, during, and after the meeting. Any written correspondence shall be sent to planning.zoning@ct.guilford.ct.us, dated at Guilford, Connecticut, the 7th day of April 2020, and posted on the Town of Guilford website, www.ci.guilford.ct.us, in accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B. Phil Johnson, Chairman.
I guess the only clarification I would have on that is it May 6th, right?
Correct.
Correct. So well, duly noted. First order of business is Russell Campaign, CK Architects, on behalf of Wendy and Bill Zabel, 38 South Fair Street, map 32, lot 55. Zone R1, special permit to build a 24 by 26 barn. Welcome, Russ.
Hello,
Is
can you hear me
Russ
okay?
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Fantastic. So I'm Russell Campaign with CK Architects, 131 Boston Street, and Wendy and Bill Zabel are on the line, and we'll chime in if they feel they need to. But we're here for an application for a special permit for an outbuilding over 750 square feet. The Zabels negotiated and purchased an interior lot that's behind their existing property on 38 South Fair. Really making for quite a large scale sort of flag style lot. The rear area that they purchased, they negotiated a 50-year deed restriction that will allow habitable space on that area in the back that they purchased, but it will allow for a utility structure. And so their idea is, one, to buffer themselves from development in other parcels behind them, but also to create a park-like
Hey, Russ.
space back there. Yes.
Russ, can I just get you to hold for 1 second?
Sure.
I think we're going to try and mute everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Hold on 1
We're
second.
getting some background noise.
Get rid of the 6-month notice.
I believe it's Gil Lombard.
Just mute him.
I got him. All right. Sorry about that, Russ.
No problem. All right, so so the rear area that they purchased, they'd like to build an outbuilding, a utility barn that that also will have quite a bit of open green yard space and plantings. And so, in going before the historic district, we did receive a certificate of approval from them. And one of the things that was discussed was the scale and proportions of that barn to be historic as a rear outbuilding. And so we did successfully, with their support, receive a variance to allow for a 20-foot high building that's similar in scale to the adjacent building on an adjacent property. And in keeping with that, we also are coming before you to ask for it to be over the 750 square foot limit that is set for outbuildings. Again, based on the proportions, and there is a letter from the historic district saying that this is a appropriate size and scale for for an in-town barn building. And so I think it's a fairly straightforward application. We're compliant in all other ways. We've addressed, I think, and have letters of support from all of the staff. And so hopefully I can answer any questions, but it's
I'm-
quite tucked back, very discreet, and I think will be a good addition, to sort of the context of the building, and it was supported by the Historic District for that as well.
Great. We have several letters. Why don't we read those in,
Yeah,
and then we'll move from there.
get some plans.
First one is the notice of variance to Wendy and William Zabel, 38 South Fair Street, Guilford. Is hereby certified on April 22nd, 2020, the Guilford Zoning Board of Appeals granted your application for a variance as follows. Owner of record, Wendy and William Zabel. Description, volume 0946, page 1061, assessors map 32, lot 55. Zoning regulations varied, section 273-24, table 3, line 3, accessory building height to allow 20 feet for construction of a detached barn. 4, nature of applications, construct detached barn. Conditions none. Reason for decision, with the support of the Historic District Commission, the increased height allowed for the structure to be more harmonious with the characteristics of the historic neighborhood. That's signed off on by Aaron Manick, Zoning Enforcement Officer. Sean, you want to grab the next one?
Is that also from Aaron Maddox?
It is.
Okay, dated May 4th, to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Aaron Maddox, Zoning Enforcement Officer, regarding Zabel 38 South Fair Street, special permit to construct barn exceeding 750 square feet. The applicant proposes a 24-foot by 26-foot detached barn at the rear of their property. They are here before you seeking a special permit per section 273-36A, as the barn exceeds 750 square feet. This proposal went before the Historic District Commission and received a certificate of appropriateness, which has been submitted for the record. In addition, the applicant received a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals at their April 24th, 2020 meeting to allow for a 20-foot maximum height. A copy of this certificate has been submitted for the record. With this variance, the proposal complies with the zoning code. To address the increased stormwater runoff, the applicant is proposing roof gutters into a 6-inch stone on filter fabric infiltration area. After consideration, should the commission choose to grant this special permit application, I recommend the following condition. 1, that the town of Guilford zoning enforcement officer be notified to inspect the cementation and erosion control measures prior to site work. Soil stock piles should be contained by silt fencing or hay bales. Soil erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained until vegetation is established or a suitable material is installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer.
Thank you. There's a quick note from Dennis Johnson, Director of Health. The applicant's proposed barn will not conflict with the location or operation of the septic system currently existing on site. That's good.
May I weigh in on one thing on the zoning officer's letter? It was stated that the barn is 24 by 26. It's actually 32 by 26. And
I apologize.
I was about to say, I did the math and that was only 620.
I looked at it too. I apologize.
okay.
And I want to share your screen, your plans as well. I was just having a slight technical difficulty as my computer decided to do an update right before this meeting. And so things got a little hairy, so I apologize. Yeah, this should be fine.
There.
Does that work, Russell?
Yes.
Okay.
So to explain the site, the gray in front is the existing building right there. And so the driveway continues, and we change actually to a stone driveway that goes beyond, and it curves so that it's not too long and enters into a new barn that's set back on the new interior portion of the lot that they purchased. Mm-hmm. And the landscaping is sort of a fence line around the perimeter and some plantings with a yard area off the building. So pretty straightforward. And if you go to the next, I can point out the scale of the barn and the size. Yep. So, on the site plan, you can see it's 24 with an 8-foot sort of add-on that's 32, and then it's 26 in front to back, which is a standard size barn. There's an 18-foot portion in front with an 8-foot lean-to, very similar to most of the historic barns that you see downtown area. You can go to the elevations and see that it's a classic style barn with a metal roof and sort of vertical siding, and there's some model images that sort of show the scales and proportion. And then I do have some photos and some model images that are matching to them. So the top photo is the barn that's adjacent on the lot that's to the south. And that actually is, I think, about 22 feet tall. And then from the street, it's very hard to see, but it's set way back behind the building. And yeah, you can see the adjacent barn roof that she just pointed out in the lower right-hand corner. There's so you can see the scale of this will be lower than that roof that you see over that white building. So, so I think that's it, unless there's questions.
Commissioners, any clarifying questions from commissioners?
Were there any comments from any of the neighbors?
We have not received any comments, and I don't know if anything got turned in or there were any comments to the.
Planning
There's
and
nothing-
zoning has not received any comments either for the zoning board of appeals meeting or for this public hearing.
Okay. Why don't we kick it back to the full screen view so we can see if anyone's interested in speaking, if that's possible. Thank you very much. Are there any clarifying questions from the audience? I don't see anybody raising their hand. Would anybody like to speak in favor of this application? Would anyone like to object to this application? Would any of the, hey, Richard, yes.
Make a motion that we might move to waive the second public hearing if it's this straightforward.
Okay. Do I have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Great. I'll call a quick vote. All in favor of waiving the second public hearing for this? I'll do a roll call vote. Sean Cosgrove,
Aye.
Richard Wallace,
Yes.
Scott Edmund,
Yes.
Jamie Stein.
Yes.
I will vote in favor of waiving it. And Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Thank you, sir. With no objection, we will be waiving the second public hearing for the special permit. Would someone like to make a motion to close?
I'll make a
So
motion to
moved.
close.
Okay, we have Richard with a motion, Sean with a second. Sean, obviously you seconded, so I assume you're saying yes. But for the record, are you in favor of closing the public hearing on this?
Yes, I am.
Richard Wallace,
Yes.
Scott Edmund,
Yes.
Jamie Stein.
Yes.
I am as well. Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Thank you very much. We will move to our next item. Jeffrey Rice, 40 East Bear House Hill Road, special permit to build a 30 by 32 barn. Is Mr. Rice available?
That's me.
Thanks
How are you?
for coming up. Great.
Good.
So once again, my name is Jeff Rice. I'm representing myself tonight. I'm the property owner on 40 East Bear House Hill Road, obviously here in Guilford. I'm putting in an application for a special permit to build over a 750 square foot utility barn, I guess is what you'd call it. Just one note here, the structure actually is not 30 by 32, it's actually 30 by 30.
Here's I found it, Russell.
All right.
I apologize.
It's the 900 square feet. We've gone through the whole process here to make sure that it's not over any boundary lines or anything like that. We're over the 20 feet from the property line, so forth and so on, below the height restrictions. And we also had Anderson and Associates here in Guilford look into the rainwater issue, and that's part of the application process as well, that we took care of that as well. And it's kind of similar in style to the last barn that just applied. It's basically a 20-foot structure with a 10-foot lean-to that is part of the inside. This actually shows where my existing house is. and the barn would actually go just off of the driveway, and we'd be extending the driveway just slightly in order to accommodate the new barn. That's pretty much all I have. I didn't know if there were any questions or anything that.
Well, we have a couple of letters to read into the record just to
Oh, sure.
take care of business. First one is from Aaron Mannix, zoning enforcement officer. The applicant is here before you per section 27336A to construct a 30 by 30. Is that right?
Yes, 30 by 30.
30 by 30 barn with a 12-foot by 32-foot. It's probably a 12-foot by 30-foot. Lean-to in excess of 750 square feet, as per the professional site plan entitled Zoning Location Survey 108, the Woodlands Section 2, prepared by Jeffrey and Abby Rice by Anderson Engineering and Surveying Associates. Date revised 4/10/20. The proposed barn is 20.5 feet from the side property line, has a total height of 20 feet taken from the existing average grade. Increased stormwater runoff will be addressed through a series of stone trenches with a minimum depth of 18 inches. After consideration, the commission should wish to approve the special permit application. I recommend the following conditions. 1, the applicant shall install silt fence at the limits of the disturbance along the southern and western areas of the project to prevent any runoff or erosion during construction. Town of Guilford enforcement officer shall be notified to inspect the sedimentation and erosion control measures prior to the site work. Soil stockpiles should be contained by silt fencing or hay bales. Soil erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained until vegetation is established or suitable material is installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. 2, upon completion of the barn construction, the applicant shall submit an as-built survey verifying compliance with setback and height requirements. Those are the 2 conditions. Are you okay with those?
Yep, absolutely, yes.
John, I think there's a letter from Dennis also.
There is, from Dennis Johnson dated May 4th, regarding 40 East Bear House Hill Road. The applicant's proposed barn will not conflict with the location or operation of the septic system currently existing on site.
Terrific. Is that it for letters? I think it is.
As far as I can see, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
How do commissioners feel about waiving a second public hearing?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to waive the second public hearing.
You have any comments or anything? You have any
No, I
comments
should see
or
if there's
questions
any
from the
comments.
audience?
I can get to those in a second.
Okay, maybe you don't want to waive the first, well, never mind. Excuse me.
Okay,
No.
well, we'll sit on that motion and second for a second then. Are there any clarifying questions from commissioners? Would anybody in the audience like to ask a question of the applicant? Yep, hold on. Let's get Barb here.
Unmute her.
I'm trying. Unmute.
Hey,
Got it.
Barb.
Do you have any drawings of that barn by chance, Aaron?
I did. Yes. Let me,
I'm just curious to see what it looked like, that's all.
It's actually a traditional post and beam barn done by the Barnyard up in Ellington. If you don't have those handy, I can probably get some fairly quickly.
let me, yeah, I'm looking online. I think we have an uploading glitch here.
Is there storage above or no?
There is storage on over half of the second level. Yes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
I don't have that available at this moment. I apologize. That is,
Hold on. So it's
I can show it in. I can show this here. This is.
Jeff, let me
If you want to look at my screen here, that's the actual blueprint.
Okay. Thank you. That's
Yep.
fine.
hold on, let me just, I'm gonna try and do something here. Let's see if, is this the correct one? Hold on.
I can show it here as well. I've got a picture. This is exactly what it's going to look like. This top
Here we
picture
go.
right here.
I think I can screen share this one. Everyone see that one?
No,
Yes.
yeah.
Great.
That's
Sorry,
a that's a handsome barn.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, sure. It's great technology. I like this. Would anyone?
It came through much clearer than you do.
Thank you. That's great. So, are there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this application from the audience? Would anyone like to speak against this application? Would any of the commission, we have a motion to waive the second public hearing in a second. I'd like to call a vote for that. Sean Cosgrove,
Aye.
you okay with waiving? Okay. Richard Wallace? Thank you, sir.
Aye.
Scott Edmond?
Yes.
Thank you. Jamie Stein?
Yes.
Thank you. I will also vote in favor of waiving. And Matt Yurzinski?
Yay.
Thank you very much. Would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Um,
I'll second.
okay. All in favor, Sean Cosgrove,
Aye.
Richard Wallace,
Aye.
Scott Edmond,
Aye.
Jamie Stein.
Yes.
I will also vote to close. Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Thank you very much. We shall move to our next agenda item. Town of Guilford Park and Recreation Department, Chatfitch Island Park, Chatfitch Island Road, map 23, lot 5, MR1 coastal area management site plan for construction of an accessible walkway to a picnic and viewing area. I assume we're going down.
We have Rick Maynard here and Michael Ott.
Hey, Rick.
Are you able to
Welcome.
unmute
How you doing?
yourselves?
You hear me okay? Am I unmuted?
Yep, we can hear you.
So I'll introduce it.
We can hear you.
I'll introduce it, and then maybe Mike Ott will address it some. But the Parks and Recreation Commission wants to make as many parks as possible accessible to people who are disabled. Chapin's Island is not. So the plan is to move the current existing handicap parking space, I guess you'd call it west. So if you drive into the parking lot, it'd be the left side, and Mike may have a diagram of that.
I've got a plan for you.
Okay, and then it's just a stone dust pathway. It goes, I don't know, maybe 80 feet or so to an area where there'd be a handicapped accessible picnic table. And the whole idea is just to make it so people who are disabled can get in there.
Oh, hold on.
Yep, there it was.
I know.
And, Mike, do you want to explain it as they bring it up?
I can. Do you want me to share it, Aaron? Do you want me to share my screen or?
I'll share it here, Mike. I think I've got it better.
Okay.
Can you see it now? Or is it too small?
I see it.
Mike, you want to walk him through it?
Sure. Good evening. I'm just for the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a professional engineer with Summerhill Civil Engineers in Madison. It's a pretty straightforward application, I think, and Rick has really explained what we're doing. That curved path that you see at the top of the drawing, if you could point, yes, thank you. It is the proposed walkway, and it'll just be a stone screening surface. It's 5 feet wide. We'll have to move a couple boulders. If you're all familiar with the park, there's a line of fairly large boulders along the edge of the parking area. We'll have to rearrange those so that people can get through. And it leads to an area that's a great spot for a picnic table or benches for views of the river. Very simple, really. There'll be geotextile silt fence, sediment control barrier. that's shown on the drawing, that kind of dark line, yep. To prevent any sedimentation into the low area to the north. We'll have to rearrange the signage out there and put up a proper sign, marking a reserved space. And Rick and I haven't talked yet exactly about how we'll delineate it on the ground, because the parking area, as you probably know, is stone surfaced or gravel surfaced. So we'll have to decide how that gets marked. That's really it in a nutshell. There's no clearing, there's no removal of vegetation at all. The town crew will just strip off the topsoil, construct the walkway, and do some grading along its sides and reseed it and establish grass again. I
Michael,
think that's it in a nutshell.
If it's okay with you, Aaron, let me go back. I could screen share that, give everyone a Google Earth shot of this, and I think you can get a good sense for it.
Sure.
So this area that I just have a question. The area that you're revising, it will be wheelchair accessible, right?
Correct.
Yes. If you look at sheet 2, I actually did a profile, along the walkway,
Okay.
to demonstrate that it meets the grades for accessibility.
And so if I'm understanding the map correctly, the path kind of goes like this and then to about here?
Yeah, about there, right, Rick? I think.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, it's about the mid area of that flat area there.
Great.
It goes right around. You can actually see the exposed ledge in this photo, and it goes right around that. It looks like it'll lay out on the ground very nicely. You can see the boulders along the edge of the parking in that photo also.
Yeah, you can. Right. I can see them.
Great. Okay. I will. Terrific.
Rick, will you be having ADA accessible? I know you were talking about the portable restrooms. Are you going to be having one near this, or that's accessible now for ADA in conjunction with this, or?
Yeah, we can easily do that. We don't have them in any of the other parks, but it probably makes sense to do that. We would only need one unit there, really, for the most part, and we would just make that an accessible unit.
Okay.
Are there any clarifying questions from commissioners?
Well,
yeah, I have one.
Yep.
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, Jamie.
No, go ahead.
Thanks. Is there a special design to the picnic table? They're hard enough for me to get in a skirt. I'm imagining how one gets in a wheelchair.
Yes, there are. Well, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, my parks crew already made one. Typical ADA table has sort of extends out more on the edges, on the sides, so you don't have the bench to try to get over. So the wheelchair could get to either side of it. At the end side.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yes, hold on, let me unmute you. Unmute, sorry. Yes, Ellen Warner.
Hi, my name's Mark Warner. I live at 212 Whitfield Street. Did I hear you say that pathway was going to be crushed stone?
Stone screenings, very, very small stone screenings. The town has a stockpile of material and they've used it in other locations and it's been successful for them.
I'm just wondering how accessible it would be with a wheelchair. It probably complies with ADA, but as far as really being able to maneuver on a crushed stone pathway, I'd kind of question that, but that's my only question.
Yeah, I understood. Yeah, it's so it gets rolled and compacted and it's not loose at all. It firms up pretty tight. And like I said, Rick can Rick can speak to it, but the town has used it elsewhere. I have experience with using them also. As long as they're compacted properly, they bond pretty tight, and it should be fine with a wheelchair or a walker.
It's the same material we have at Jacobs Beach, the walkway around the playground, or if you go into the boat racks, that's stone dust, and all around the picnic shelters at Jacobs Beach, that's the same product, same material.
And it's probably, Rick, it's probably permeable, right?
It is.
Yes.
Right, Mike?
To some degree, the more, the more it gets used and walked on, it gets a little compact, but it's not an issue here. It's only 5 feet wide, and surface water runoff drains right to a flat lawn. So it's stormwater runoff's not a concern here.
But it's not concrete. It will have some
Oh, no.
permeability.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it rains, when the rain's light, it'll infiltrate. If it rains really hard, after it's compact, it might run off.
Great. Any clarifying questions from commissioners? As this is just a coastal area management site plan, does not require a second public hearing. So would anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of this application? Would anyone like to speak against this application? With no objection, would someone like to make a,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we have some comments from the state that we
we
need
do?
to add in as well. Here, if you can, are those visible on there now? From Carol Zamansky. See this?
Carol Szymanski, Monday, March 30th, 2020. Lisa Chaffinch Island, Ari Chaffinch Island Park, proposed walkway, Chaffinch Island Road, Guilford Parks and Recreation Department applicant, Dear Planning and Zoning Commissioners. The proposal is to construct a public access walkway in a waterfront municipal park for scenic viewing purposes and accessing a picnic area. Public access walkways are considered water-dependent uses. We prefer a stone dust path as a low-maintenance ground material would be, but would accept brick or blacktop as appropriate and long-lasting. We understand that silt fencing will be installed prior to any land disturbance. Any stockpile of excavated soils or any materials brought in will be stored away from the coastal waters. Sincerely, Carol Zamansky, Environmental Analyst 2. I'm not sure, L and WRD CT DEP. Thank you. Okay. So is that it in terms of additional letters? Do we have anything else, Karen?
I had staff comments from Kevin McGee. I'm getting those for you now. I can read that into the record for you. The town of Guilford is looking to install an accessible gravel walkway to a picnic and viewing area of the West River. The proposed walkway to the viewing area is consistent with the general public access to coastal waters policy of the state of Connecticut Coastal Area Management Act. The proposed work is located in a FEMA VE elevation 13 flood zone. The coastal resource policies applicable for the property are coastal hazard areas, rocky shorefront, coastal waters, and tidal wetlands. The site plan provides for erosion and sedimentation control measures that are designed to protect the adjacent coastal resources. The work being conducted could have an impact on the adjacent coastal resources if the erosion and sedimentation control measures are not properly installed and maintained. In order to make sure that the coastal resources are protected, I recommend the following conditions of approval. Number one, the town of Guilford zoning enforcement officers should be notified to inspect the sedimentation and erosion control measures prior to any site construction. Soil stockpiles should be contained by silt fence or hay bales. Soil erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained until vegetation is established or suitable material is installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. And that's that.
With all the letters and town staff memos read in, would someone like to make a motion to close?
I motion to close the
I'll
public
make a
hearing.
motion.
All right, you got in a little late, Sean. You're the second. I'll do a quick roll call vote. Sean?
Aye.
Thank you. Richard Wallace?
Aye.
Scott Edmund?
Aye.
Jamie Stein?
Yes.
I will vote in favor of closing. And Matt Yurzinski?
Yay.
Thank you, sir. We'll close, move on to our next item, which is also the Parks and Recreation Department. Calvin Leach School, 280 South Union, map 41, lot 18, zone R3, coastal area management and site plan for construction of a 12 by 16 addition to existing athletic equipment shed. Welcome back, Rick.
Okay. Again, Mike Ott is helping us with this project also, and but I'll introduce it. This is actually an Eagle Scout project. Michael Malatesta had come to the Parks and Recreation Commission with a desire to add on to that shed there to help out with the soccer fest and other soccer club equipment. As Aaron's bringing up here, it's just a small addition, 12 feet by 16 foot addition onto the existing shed there.
Great.
See the shed there? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's a little small, but
This,
again, because it required a CAM application, Mike worked with us to complete that application. Mike, do you want to talk about the construction of it or anything?
Sure. This is probably even more straightforward, I think, than the previous application. The Eagle Scout candidate would just like to add on to that existing shed. You can see it's on the addition is on the landward side, away from the tidal wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll just be typical shed construction. There's no foundation. It's just sitting on sleepers on the ground, just like the old shed, or the current shed. There's no utilities to it. There's, like I said, there's no excavation. It's pretty straightforward. The lawn area there is very flat, so runoff should not be a problem, and the potential for sediment to get into the tidal wetlands is extremely low, given how flat it is and how far away it is from the tidal wetlands. It is in a flood zone. You'll hear probably when Aaron reads letters into the record, almost the whole school site behind the buildings is within a special flood hazard area zone. And the requirements for that will get taken care of when the Eagle Scout candidate submits the building permit application. Those will be taken care of by the building department.
Are there any special enforcements to prevent flotation or whatever in the event of a flood?
Yeah, so the town's floodplain management regulations, like all towns, require that a detached building like this be anchored to prevent flotation. So they will have to anchor it. And again, that gets taken care of in the building permit application review.
Terrific.
Bill?
Are there any questions from commissioners?
I got one.
Rich has
Noting
one.
Carol's letter of
yep.
approval or conditions that there was a notation made for runoff of flood water. So it means like a slightly elevated building.
And let's see.
Her
we have
letter
a couple of
actually
letters.
appears in the file.
There's a couple of
I
letters
have
to
it
read in
here.
anyway, so why don't I start with Aaron's first. Park and Recreation Department is seeking approval to construct a 12 by 16 addition to an existing athletic storage equipment shed. The existing structure is roughly 15 feet by 30 feet, as shown on the site plan provided with this application. The proposal falls within the 100-foot tidal wetlands, thereby requiring a coastal site application in addition to site plan approval. The proposed work will be conducted as an Eagle Scout project. The proposed structure complies with the zoning code. Please refer the staff report by Kevin McGee, environmental planner, dated 4/30/20 for details regarding erosion and sedimentation control. Sean, you want to grab the one from Dennis?
Sure. From Dennis Johnson, dated May 4th, regarding this application. The applicant's proposed addition to existing athletic equipment shed will not conflict with the location or operation of the septic system currently or existing on site. And then, you want to read Kevin's?
Yeah, Kevin McGee, RE Coastal Area Management Review, Town of Guilford Parks and Rec, Calvin Leach School, 280 South Union Street, Guilford, Connecticut. Assessor's map 41, lot 18. The Town of Guilford is looking to install, I think it's a 12 by 16, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, right. That was
2 by 16 is not going to do it. 12 by 16 addition to an existing athletic equipment storage shed. The proposed work is located in a FEMA AEEL 11 flood zone. The coastal resource policies applicable for the property are coastal hazard area, and tidal wetlands. No erosion and sedimentation control measures have been shown on the plan. As long as the site work is conducted in one day and any soil spoils generated or transported off the property, the work should not impact the adjacent coastal resources. Oh, just for
Yes.
the
And
heck
did we
of it,
read
I'll just
Carol's yet?
because I have this up.
it's not, I don't have it before.
No,
So.
just for
Okay.
everyone's
I-
It
benefit.
actually
share that.
falls into,
Right here. So if you want me to zoom out, you can kind of get a sense as to where it is and where the addition's going to go. Okay.
No, I'll give you Carol's screen so we can read her letter as well.
These are not the easiest ones. Dear Planning and Zoning Commissioners, the proposal is to construct a 12 by 16 foot. No. I only see half
Okay,
of it.
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
it's,
sorry.
That's okay.
Here.
Does that mean it's only half approved?
Yeah, that's better. That's about a million
You
times.
want me
There we
to
go.
read it?
Perfect. Now I got it. 12 by 16 foot storage shed addition in an AE11 flood zone on a school athletic field. We recommend that the structure be constructed of flood resistant materials capable of withstanding wet conditions to some degree. The structure should be anchored in place to resist flotation and lateral movement. Since it will only be used for storage purposes, is not required to be elevated, although elevating the structure to the degree practical is advisable. Flood vents must be installed to allow the free flow flood waters to enter and exit the building. No elevations of the structure have been submitted. Any utilities serving the structure, electric, HVAC, must be elevated above BFE or floodproof. Sincerely, Carol Zemansky, Environmental Analyst, L and WRD, Connecticut DEP. Any questions from commissioners? Would anybody in the audience like to ask a question about the project? Hey, Frank. Would anybody like to speak in favor of this application? Would anybody like to object to this application or speak against this application? With no further comments, would someone like to make a motion to close?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
I'll second.
There's a little lag. here
Seconds,
sometimes.
thirds, you know.
I'm going to do a quick roll call vote. Sean Cosgrove, motion to close. Are you okay?
Yep.
Thank you. Richard
Aye.
Wallace,
Yes.
Scott Edmund,
Yes.
Frank, I see you join us. Would you like to agree with our motion to close?
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
sir. Jamie?
Yes.
Jamie Stein. I will also ask that it be closed and vote to that effect. Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Thank you very much. We shall move to our next item. First is, We want to do the pole barns first, Barbara, or do we want to do the special permit conditions first?
Let's do the pole barns. That's probably the easiest at this point.
Sure. Guilford Agricultural Society, 111 Lovers Lane, Fairground, map 40, lot 138, zone R3, special permit to construct 4 additional pole barns, continued from April 15th, 2020 meeting. Welcome.
Thank you. Basically, we're asking to build the 4 additional pole barns. As was stated in the last meeting, the majority of this will help to alleviate us renting tents that we do every year. It'll also give us extra storage for all our items from the fair, and help to clean up things around the property a little bit more. The only time that I could foresee 1 or 2 of the barns being utilized is if we had another agricultural event, as like the 4-H fair or something of that effect down there. And they're going to be built behind the existing 2 new barns that are there.
I assume that they're in basically the same locations that the tents normally go during the fair.
That is correct.
So,
Aaron, can you point out where the pole barns are located?
I can
This
do
is
one
the
better than that, Sean.
Existing, and
If
this
we can go
existing
back to
exhibit.
the full screen for a second, Aaron. This is actually, obviously this is a Google Earth image, but it's during the fair, pretty obviously, I think. Or it's during some type of an event, my guess is the fair. And so the barns are gonna be one, similar to where the tents are. 1, 2, 3,
Exactly.
4.
Yes. The two, how shall I say? I know I can't move the mouse. Oh, yeah, I can. I don't know if
This
you
one
can
and
see
this
my
one?
pointer. Nope, the other way, over to your left. The 2
Yeah.
to your, that,
The ones
there.
that back up to the ones that back up to Whitfield Street.
These 2?
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay. That one that you have your pointer on now, okay,
Right.
and the one just before that. Those
That one.
2 are gonna be the open pole. Yes, yep. Those would be the 2 open pole barns. Those are where
Okay.
the livestock go, okay? The one
And then this one. and this
further
one.
up, right, those 2 will be the enclosed barns.
Got it.
Again, for exhibits, but those will be the enclosed barns.
Great. Well, I would go back to stopping to share, and I assume we did get a copy of your letter regarding from David Papaluzio, I believe. Connolly team regarding the value. Do you want to address that? The question.
I
with
don't
the-
have Dave. Yeah, I mean, I can address it. I had also talked to a couple people regarding real estate as well, and I have access to the files. There is no impact to the home values with the construction of those barns. Mainly, people have to understand home values are market driven and time of year and what the economy is doing and everything. So you can't just broadly say, oh, well, my value went down because the barns are there. That doesn't pan out, okay? We are coming up on a new townwide revaluation for 2022. So depending on how the economy is doing and everything and how the sales are between October 1st of 21 to September of 22 will dictate what the new market values will be. It's what people are willing to pay for a home, is a lot of it. You really won't see these buildings from the road because they're going to be constructed behind the existing buildings. And again, the main use for these is, to put our equipment and stuff inside them. Again, like I said, if for some reason the 4-H fair would like to have their fair there, we would probably utilize a couple of the buildings. Their fair isn't that big, so I couldn't foresee, everything being utilized. And then this letter is from one of the real estate agents.
Thank you. Do you want us to read that into the record?
Yes, please.
But Phil, do you want me to do it or you go?
Want me to read it or? Okay.
Whatever you like. It's your application, you can read it if you want. That's fine.
Okay. This is from Ryan Connolly, who's a real estate agent. As a realty team, we have been asked to, if the addition of 2 enclosed barns and 2 open structures at 111 Lovers Lane in Guilford will change the home values in the surrounding area. Our understanding is that the structures to be built will be located behind the existing buildings and therefore will have very little presence when viewed from the street. Because the visual footprint of the fairgrounds has not changed, it shall not alter the way the property presents itself to the neighborhood. It will still be the same fairgrounds it has been for many years, which home buyers and sellers have factored into their home value, either positive or negative, and therefore should not have any significant impact on the real estate prices. On a positive note, the enclosed barn will provide the Ag Society with the opportunity to store more of their equipment and the blue barrels that line Lovers Lane during the fair inside and out of sight from the road. While this will not change home values, it does help the Agricultural Society keep the property more organized and presentable. Warm regards, Brian Connolly.
Thank you. There's a letter here from Mark Warner. Is Mark here by any chance? Hey, Mark, hold on. Let me unmute you. There you go. It looks like you're good to go, Mark. Do you want to read your letter?
Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
Oh.
Can you read it? But I do have a comment before you read the letter. Is this the time for that? Can I?
Sure, you can do a quick comment and then one of us can read your letter.
Well, one question is this affecting any of the setbacks?
I assume that these buildings would be compliant with setback regulations. Aaron?
Okay, but just to let you know, we live at 212 Whitfield Street, which is on the map it's indicated as Kathy Mack's property. It's now Warner property. But that visual that you showed, the aerial, it's a little disturbing because we can see the fairgrounds quite easily right now, right through the trees. And behind the buildings that are presently there are all those blue barrels being stored, plus, I mean, a lot of trash and stuff is there. It's not a very pleasant sight. And there's trash along the boundary line between their property, the fairgrounds yards. It goes into Sluice Creek. Sometimes we even see oil slicks on the water. By putting another building there suggests the possibility of putting more, and for lack of a better word, and I apologize, but trash there, which will further pollute Sluice Creek. And it's disturbing because you see the oil slicks, and I can see the trash if I walk along the area there. So that's one point that's disturbing to me. And now I guess we can read the letter.
Okay. Again, this is from Mark Warner. I will stop. Stop this. My wife and I recently moved to a residence at 212 Whitfield Street in Guilford, immediately adjacent to the Guilford Fairgrounds. With the short span of only 1 year, we have come to enjoy and discover the benefits of living in Guilford and pride people take here residing in this wonderful town and community. However, it has come to our attention through word of mouth from numerous neighbors of a request to grant special permit, changing the use of the fairgrounds from allowing not-for-profit events to allowing for-profit events. I write to strongly object to granting such a change. So obviously this relates to the other one, but I will continue, which would greatly affect the well-being, comfort, and property values of all the surrounding homes and families conservatively living within a half-mile radius of this property. Please note that despite the requirements to furnish certified notifications of such requests, we did not receive notification of any sort, with the exception of coincidentally hearing about it from upset neighbors also impacted by this possible zoning modification. Furthermore, due to the present restrictions and efforts to isolate and protect ourselves from the COVID virus, town hall meetings make it life-threatening. I might add a whole punch of social distancing steps to protect ourselves, friends, and neighbors. Thus, the timing and possibility of attending such meetings is a concern and makes it impossible to attend community meetings in person. That said, we request that you please be aware of the likelihood of a potential impact of inviting, allowing, and encouraging enhanced commercial activities to this property, presently and historically zoned for residential use. This would clearly have catastrophic impact on our way of life and the pleasure we enjoy. Having chosen this location to live and raise our families, please know that that prior to moving to this location in Guilford, we did our homework and were aware of previous special permit, yet took solace in realizing the types, frequency, and number of events that take place on the adjacent property would be nonprofit, realizing these and reasonably timed and reasonably limited. Had we known there would be such a change in zoning allowing for for-profit events, including weddings, parties, etc., we would never have selected or purchased this location. Please also be aware your decision in this matter is very important and greatly affects residents and citizens of the surrounding area. At present, there are already loud celebrations that last well into the evenings. Dogs up for adoption remain on the site overnight, barking throughout the night. Drumbeat all day and into the night. Public cuts through our property to sneak onto the fairground events for free. Traffic jams often occur on Whitfield Street when the public simultaneously dashes to their cars, leaving the 4th of July fireworks display. Screams of glee and delight are heard far and wide from people enjoying the fair rides and events and public events. Public even comes into our yard and property where there are chairs and blankets to watch the 4th of July fireworks. But frankly, these are fine and acceptable. We do not mind. We even like being part of the community in this way, happily tolerating these minor and infrequent occurrences, but expanding the restrictions and inviting commercial events is not all right. Please also note that aside from commonplace objections that normally occur regarding such requests for variances, traffic, parking, insufficient restroom facilities, etc., consider the potential environmental effect this could have. There already seems to have been a potential problem with the fairgrounds on-site trash seeping into and polluting the adjacent protected wetlands. We also fear this may be one step closer to more drastic changes in the zoning and nature of the area. Therefore, we, and numerous other families affected by this change in zoning property use strongly request the planning board use their power and authority to continue to protect the Guilford citizens and do not allow the commercialization of the fairground property. We further ask the building and zoning department, please include our name and address for notification of future events that directly affect us and potentially impact our property and way of life. Thank you for your attention and matter in consideration. That seems to relate more to the change of use than the construction of the pole barns, but that's where I had it in my order, so it's in the record now. That should relate more directly.
I know most of that relates to the next issue. I just would like to clarify something that was stated. When they're speaking of inadequate restroom facilities, that is not true. We have adequate restroom facilities, and during the fair, we actually bring in extra porta potties just in case. Those septic tanks are pumped on a regular basis. We've never had an issue since we've been there since 1969. And during the fair time, we handle up to 20,000 people or so. So I just wanted to clarify that. Garbage around, we can get into that later.
I see there's also a letter from Peter Perugini, and I see that you're here, Peter. Does your letter relate more so to the zoning change or to the buildings or to both? Sorry, you're not, I have to unmute you. My apologies. You are unmuted.
Yeah, that's okay. Hi, I guess I have prepared comments. My letter relates to both, and so do my prepared comments. So I'm fine if you want to do them together with the other one, as long as that's procedurally okay.
Well, let's see. Technically, we're still in the question phase. So.
Oh, okay. I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
The barn that's going behind the existing enclosed barn, I just want clarification. Is that a closed or an open barn?
The one that's between the bathroom and the existing barn is a closed barn.
Is a closed barn. Okay. And okay, that's fine. And it's going to be constructed like the other one, just solid walls, just post and beam and wood panels, basically.
It'll be exactly like the barns that are existing there. We're hoping to use the same company, actually.
Okay.
Hopefully they'll still be around, but I mean, no matter what, those are the plans that we have submitted, and that's what we're going with.
Okay. I have no further comments. I only have questions. I mean, I have no further questions. I only have comments.
Yeah, I will ask the audience if there are any further clarifying questions. Yes, Mr. Schaefer, let me unmute you. Working on it. Aaron, I'm having trouble unmuting Mr. Schaefer. Can you help me out?
Yes.
Here, I unmuted myself. Is that better?
Perfect.
Better.
Thank
you.
The question was asked last time, is the building of the barns or the construction of the barns dependent on what's been described as the zoning change? In other words, do you have the cash? Is it going to be possible to do one without the other?
As I was saying before, this is nothing that's happening right today or tomorrow. We're planning this for the future. That's why we're trying to get this in place so that down the road we don't have a lot of issues or somebody didn't do something correctly as far as building permits, etc. It cost us approximately $14,000 a year to maintain the fairgrounds. That's mowing, that's building maintenance, that's our electric, our everything throughout the year. So it's about $14,000 a year. So the money that we're raising from these events that's where that money is going into.
I had a second question, but I don't know where I had understood from somebody, one of the neighbors, and I may be wrong, and if so, I apologize, that the Connolly letter was withdrawn. I don't know who told me that, but I think somebody did. I may be wrong.
No,
I haven't heard anything of that.
no, there's
Well,
no reason that it.
Is Albert on, if you unmuted Albert Kraus, I think he's my neighbor. I think that's where I heard that.
Albert Kraus has his hand raised if he has a question.
I am here. I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, do you have a question?
Yeah.
You have a question?
Well, it wasn't as much a question because I did not have information about the Connolly letter other than what I read in it, but I do have a comment to make, but it's not really a question, but I have additional perspective that questions the assessment that is written by that.
If you don't mind,
I can hold that for whatever time is appropriate.
that would be great. Let's get through clarifying questions, and then we'll go to people speaking in favor and against, okay?
Thank you.
I have a question. It's Howard Brown. Can I ask it?
Certainly.
Barb, I think when Phil Schaefer asked you a question, I'm not sure that you answered it exactly. I think he was asking if is the income that you anticipate, is the funds needed to build the barns anticipated to come from the expanded uses that is in the other permit?
No.
Okay.
Yes, Peter.
I have a follow-up question. Is there anybody here from the realty firm? I have a specific question relating to their letter.
They are not on, Peter.
Okay.
If you need something specific, I'm sure we can have you either get in touch with them or we can have them get in touch with you.
Okay, yeah, I was curious. It does talk about construction not affecting property values in their opinion, but it doesn't talk about usage. And that's where my concerns lie with the buildings is usage. So I think, it should be commented that their response does not talk about any of the usage of the property. It just talks about construction of the physical structures in their opinion.
I mean, we can certainly have them submit something to you, as far as that goes. I mean, I think we're looking at two different aspects here. We're looking at the permit for the barns, and then we're looking at what can be done with the special permit. So I think we're looking at two different scenarios here. Am I correct, Phil?
Yes, and just for clarification, obviously, with the potential construction of the buildings, you save the cost of not having to rent the tents. So there's an offset on that as well. So it's something to consider as well. Any further questions from the audience? Would anybody like to speak in favor of this application? I don't see anybody.
Ed Lombard and Gil are both raising their hands here.
Okay. Why don't we go with Gil first?
Can you hear me?
It's not on screen.
No, this is only my second time.
I think you
muted yourself, Gil. Hold on.
I don't know.
There you go, Gil. You're back on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just had a few things to answer Mr. Warner's problems. I grew up on 95 Whitfield, or 95 Boston Street. And I think there's the new owner is with us tonight. I think I remember the name. And anyway, you talked about oil and pollution and what have you. As a kid, I grew up, and that stream comes up from Route 1, goes through the Fonticello property, down Pearl Street, behind my parents' old house, out through there. That has always had pollution in it. I'm on the field every single day, walking it with my wife and my dog. I have never seen pollution in the back of it. The stream pretty much is gone because it has not been allowed, we have not been allowed to open it up. So I really don't think there's pollution back there. I know there's clutter behind it, which is one of the reasons we want the barns. Most of that clutter, especially the blue barrels and the green barrels, would be put inside. The machinery would be able to be put inside. So that is something that I think should be done. As far as the letters being sent, I believe I've seen the planning and zoning letters, and there was a letter sent to Kathy Mack's old address. Forgive me, I don't know all your names. The drums, I'd make some notes as you were reading everything here. As far as the dogs barking and all, I was over there at night the last 2 times we've had it. The dogs sleep at night. They do bark during the day. But then again, sir, you bought Kathy Mack's house. I live across the way from you. I can see your house from my back porch. I can hear your dog, and I can hear you yelling at your dog. So what? Who cares? Let's see. As far as the drums, that's with the Hammonasset people, Friends of Hammonasset. It's an Indian production. Maybe that's not politically correct. Call them Indians now. I don't know. But that is done by late afternoon. There is no drums at night. I've never heard them there. And I'm for it. I'm part of the fair. I grew up on 95 Boston Street. So I'm 76 years old. I've been here all my life. My property abuts to it. As a matter of fact, my fence is more on my side. So there's about 6 feet of my property is in the fairgrounds that's used. I've said enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else raising their hand, Aaron?
But no, I don't. If I have Ed
Hold on,
Lombard.
I got Russ there. Hold on, let me. Russ, you're unmuted. You're on.
All right. I live on Boston Street. I'm not a direct abutter, but obviously near enough to know what's going on in the fairgrounds. And I've been here for 20 years, grew up in the area. And I see the fairgrounds as a tenuous asset that is in the town that hosts a lot of fundraisers and other great events for the town, for developing community, et cetera. And I do think that it's a difficult task for them to raise the funds, maintain that area, and be able to keep it operational and available and accessible for a lot of nonprofits in the town. And so I have to say that as a neighbor to this, I'm actually came in with my eyes wide open. I enjoy the events. Obviously, at times, just like any neighbor, they can, be a little annoying at times. But I see the greater good that they bring as far exceeding the damage. And I really do fear, if they aren't financially able to continue, what possibilities and density could be built there. Realistically, yes, it is a residential use, but I love to walk through there. Everybody loves to view it as you drive by. It's an open space that is unusual to have in a downtown. And if it were to be sold, they would want to maximize its value and, be able to purchase another property to operate in. And likely, it would go to a very dense residential community, which would really change the aesthetics of the downtown. So I support the application for the barns. I do like that there's conditions associated with not-for-profit use. I do think it would be a very different venture. So I would not support changing it to use for-profit. But the not-for-profit, I think they have a good balance of a number of events, and I think there could even be a few more.
We'll get to that part of the application.
Okay, but the barns, I think, have very little impact, and if anything, will improve the aesthetic of the property.
With the construction of the barns.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Would
you,
anyone
Russ.
else like to speak in favor of this application?
We have Ed Lombard.
Okay.
Ed, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay,
Yes.
go
thank
ahead.
you.
You can.
I live at 33 Lovers Lane. Lived here basically my whole life of 44 years, I guess. And my first comment was, again, what Gil was saying about the swamp / Sluice Creek. If you come upstream of the fairgrounds, there's that same, quote, oily slick. Well, most stagnant type swamps have that. That's a natural deterioration of organic matters. And a lot of times it will look like oil or gas on top of the water, but that's actually a natural breakdown of that. And that's upstream. It's not caused by the fairgrounds. And as far as the buildings, I think exactly what has been said, that it will help clean up and maintain the fairgrounds where the machinery is not outside, being weathered, additional upkeep there. The quote blue barrels that have come up will be put away out of sight. Line of sight really isn't going to change. If anything, I believe my property would change the most from that line of sight, which would actually cut off the spotlights from 211 Whitfield Street coming in my back windows at night. So it actually reduced that for me. We actually share, I think, about 800 feet of border on the north side of the fairgrounds with my property. Well, I say my property, it's in probate right now, so soon to be my property, but the family property that I'm currently living on. It's basically a buffer between the fairgrounds and all the houses on Boston Street.
Is this your home?
Yes.
Thank you.
And we extend almost to the right-hand side, about the middle of those trees, no, farther right. Right. Yep, our property line's right there. It comes all the way down. Actually, we have, we're adjacent to one of the properties on Whitfield Street, at the bottom left of the screen. And all the houses on Wheaton Avenue. We actually have 11 neighbors to our property. So our property would be kind of a buffer. It's about 5 acres there.
So as a direct abutting neighbor, do you see the construction of these barns as a positive?
Yes, most definitely is a positive. I would support it 100%.
Terrific. Let me stop doing this. Great. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of this application? I'm sorry. Are you finished, Ed, or do you want to keep?
Yeah, no, that's for the building. I'm finished. I can speak again, I guess, on the other topic if need be.
Am I still muted?
Kimberly Brockett is also raising her hand.
Got it.
Kimberly?
Hi,
Am I unmuted?
You
Identify
are.
yourself and your address for the record.
Sorry.
Yes. Kimberly Brockett, 222 Flag Marsh Road. I am on the board of directors for the Guilford Fair. We have animals that we show at the fair every year, and they are now in one of the barns that's there. So I am a huge proponent of putting up additional barns. As Barb said, this is a multi-year process. This is not going to happen overnight. It's for long-term planning to get rid of having to rent the tents every year, which would help us financially. But as I said, we don't have the funds to do it all at once, so it will happen over time, but it will help the fair long-term, both with the operations as well as everyone had said in terms of keeping the property neat and putting all of our equipment and supplies under cover.
Terrific. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of this application? All right, then. Would anyone like to speak against this application? Hi, Albert. Hold on. Let me unmute you.
I'm unmuted, I think. Yeah, so, just to clarify, I'm not against, reasonable structures of a reasonable size in a reasonable layout. But I am concerned about the proposals I've seen about it. And so I want to thank you for the chance to make a brief statement. I do have a few prepared words, and it won't be that long, but my name's Albert Krause. For the record, my wife, Jan Brissett, and I live with our family at 95 Boston Street, which is not for the last 4 to 5 years. So prior to that, we lived at Guilford Lakes. We've enjoyed living in town, close to the fairgrounds, In our time in Guilford and here on 95 Boston Street, we appreciate all the Agricultural Society and Fairgrounds have brought to Guilford and the Guilford citizens. It's a Guilford treasure. So first, I want to thank everyone who makes, the Agricultural Society and Fairgrounds work. In our view, things have gone well with the fairgrounds over the time we've lived down here. A few days ago, I found out about this planning and zoning request and specific meeting, verbally from a local resident by happenstance. While our property does not abut the fairgrounds by lot line, our lot line is quite close, and we do abut visually, audibly, and by smell. We've enjoyed that, especially smelling and hearing cows, pull horses, other animals during fair times. So I had a couple days to try to understand what's a lot of information here. And I apologize if I missed something. I'm pretty new to this apparently longer story. This said, one aspect I want to comment on tonight is the written correspondence regarding real estate, value, and fairgrounds appearance. While this assessment that was in question before from the realtors, while this assessment may address the street view, perhaps it has not considered some of the individual property views and values that may be impacted by placing 4 new large 40-foot by 120-foot permanent structures in a small location in a corner of the total property. For instance, the view from all levels of the back of our house and the backyard view directly the section where new construction is proposed. For our property, the existing buildings unfortunately would not hide the proposed new ones as outlined in that real estate assessment. We may not be alone in this. The construction will triple the number of large buildings in that small area, from 2 to 6. The view from our house and yard will change from one of a small farm feel with mixed barn style and grass views to that of the backside of a closely built large structures, looking like a large industrial farm or commercial enterprise. We consider that this would be negative to us individually and also negatively impact our property value. Perhaps consideration could be given to reduced and more spaced out building locations in the plan. This said, these comments kind of just refer to the structures. Of course, we're concerned about the other usages, but this said, I do support continued strong agricultural society events and participation in balance with neighbor needs and involvements. It seems to have been effective over the last number of years, at least as long as we've lived here, 4 to 5 years. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to share these points and for your consideration of this in further planning and zoning process and decisions on this proposal. If it would be helpful for the committee, I'd be happy to share a written version of this statement as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Would anybody else like to speak against this application? Yes, hold on, let me unmute you. There you go. I think.
Are you doing the Warners?
They might need to unmute
I went to
themselves.
there you go. The Warners are up.
Okay, this is Ellen Warner, and we have lived here since January of 2019. And it's because we're so new that I would like to challenge the realtor's assessment that it wouldn't harm property values. From our angle, from where our home is, it would harm it. You will be building a structure much closer to our lot. When we were looking at this house, I spent a lot of time with in the town clerk's office, following every transaction that this property had, I spent a lot of time on the fair's website because I was concerned that we would be bothered by the noise from a fairground if there were commercial enterprises there. And the only reason we bought this house is because of the not-for-profit status.
Right, again, the application we're talking about now, we're just referring to the construction of the barns.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that it would have harmed the property value of this house because we would not have purchased it. So I'm challenging that. Last year, there was one event that I don't know what the heck it was. It was some kind of party in that enclosed barn or by that enclosed barn that went on way past 11:30. Drinking, partying, lots of loud music, and some screaming. And we're going to call the police, but I didn't want to bother the police with that. I don't know what it was, but it was very close to our property. And my concern is that if there are 4-H events, that new structure even closer to our property, it would even be more audible and just not pleasant for the people that live on Woodfield Street.
Can I just ask a quick question of Barb? I'm assuming that the events that are taking place now are in the barn that is closest to the Warner's house?
That is correct. Basically, you've had the Lobster Fest, which has utilized that barn. The the dog adoptions.
So that's this barn, correct?
That's correct. And it only opens up widely on the side towards Lover's Lane. Okay. So the rest of it is enclosed, except, I mean, there's a doorway, there has to be per fire code, but the rest of it is enclosed. So the only real open end is towards Lover's Lane. And then the Indian Festival, they have utilized inside the barn for some exhibits and that, but again, nothing into the evening. The event that they may be talking about is the one that I had mentioned the last meeting that I was at, which was a member's wedding that was held there. I was at that wedding. They had a DJ. I specifically walked the perimeter of the fairgrounds to listen for the music and the noise and everything. And it wasn't that loud at all. You couldn't really hear the majority of what was going on in there. And I did that specifically in case somebody complained. I think part of the problem here is, and I am going to say this, and I'm not, it's that you know, we list the events that are going on that fairgrounds every year. Planning and Zoning has had them. They're on the fair's website. People purchasing homes, whoever the real estate agent was should have disclosed all that information. That is something that they have to do. Any home that's up for sale, if there's something adverse towards that home, it is the realtor's responsibility to disclose that.
Well, and what I might also note for the Warners, that if in fact they did construct a barn that was closer, it's very possible that it'd be used for storage and actually could potentially serve to deflect noise or reduce noise onto your property. And it would also afford them a place to put a lot of their outside equipment right now, so it's not visible to you all during, I assume, the winter months is what you're talking about, because once it leaves in the spring and summer, I suspect it's a little more difficult to see.
Well, the photograph that you have is an old photograph with a lot of foliage, and that foliage has thinned out a lot from the storms. And
The image was dated 9/18 of 2019.
Really?
So it's not. I think it's probably more a function of perspective because you're looking at it from above.
All right, so I'm just concerned. I'm not objecting. I'm concerned about that barn closer to us, but it certainly the fact that the fairgrounds is there doesn't enhance our property value at all. My wonderful realtor did tell us about it. I did my research.
But it was zoned R3. It was not zoned commercial.
So, are you, I think we've got to, I mean, it sounds to me like your objection is more with respect to the utilization of the property than with respect to the barns, more?
It's just the location of the barn was my concern. I don't, I'm not going to be screaming about it, but I was concerned that it would have an event like that wedding, and you may have walked the perimeter, but I don't think you walked in back because it was like we were at the party.
Yeah, we had to close our windows, and even with our windows closed, we still clearly use it.
I just want to mention I did specifically walk to your portion of the property.
Okay,
well,
Again, because none of us are the police with the recording equipment to monitor this, it really is a function of perspective. So I think we can move on from that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Would anyone else like to speak against this application? Anyone? No? With no further comments, would someone like to make a motion to close this application? Do we have everything read in for the record that we need to, Aaron?
We read staff reports at the last meeting, and I believe we've had our letters in opposition read in. So I think we are up to date.
Peter, yours is the only one that was not read in. Do you want to read in your letter, make any further comments on with respect to the
I
building?
do not have a copy of my letter. I guess I would, it was posted. I'm sure the neighbors reviewed it because I did get a few phone calls. I just want to make sure that it's included in the record and that the commissioners or members of the committee have at least reviewed it.
I have that here.
I have read it and reviewed it, but I can't attest for everyone else. So
I also read it and reviewed it.
a well-written letter, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Read the letter also.
This is your letter, correct, Peter?
Yes, and I don't want to bore everybody by reading it. I just want to make sure that that it's in the record and that I do have prepared comments that I can give for the next portion of the hearing. But this also does have a section specifically addressing the barn portion of the application. It's, I believe, a few pages back.
Right. I can read that quickly. It's on, I think, page 3. Current application is seeking approval for 4 additional structures to be added to the site. We do not object to the appearance of the barns or pavilions. We are aware of the agricultural societies to gain additional storage, limit tent rental, and improve the experience for the Guilford Fair participants, exhibitors, and patrons. We are concerned with the fact that the current application does not include any limitations about the use of these buildings. The buildings make the property more attractive from a rental standpoint and provide the potential for expansion of activities and higher utilization of the fairgrounds, which could have adverse effects on neighbors, property values, usage, and quiet enjoyment of their property. It should be noted that the construction of these structures creates additional maintenance and financial burdens on the volunteers of the agricultural society in general, which may compel them to maximize rental revenues in the future. I believe that relates, those are your comments relating to the barns themselves.
Yes, thank you.
Certainly. Any further comments with respect to feelings against this project? With no additional comments, I'd like to ask one of the commissioners to make a motion to close.
I'll motion to close.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll do a quick roll call. Sorry, I go back to the other page. Sean Cosgrove,
Aye.
Richard Wallace,
Aye.
Scott Edmond,
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea,
Yes.
Jamie Stein.
Yes.
I will also motion, I will also vote to close. Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Thank you very much. Barbara, we're moving on to the second portion which, if we thought the first one was tough,
Well, actually, we've had some meetings. We've actually had 2 meetings, virtual meetings since the last go around here, with Lou Federici, Harvey Smith, myself, Dave Papaluzio, and some of the neighbors. And we have tried to, and George, I'm sorry, George. We've tried to iron some things out and see, where we can kind of come to an agreement on things. George, I don't know, Aaron, do you have the draft from May 1st by chance?
Mm-hmm. Sure, I'll share that.
And I have, well, we'll start with the beginning portion of it.
Is this legible for everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Item 3, I think Gil, I don't know if Gil's still muted or not, but I
I'm
think
here. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I think you could mention why we even toyed with the for-profit idea.
It goes by what you were talking about in the beginning, Barbara, that we need the money to even keep the place neat, which has been actually pretty easy this year. We've had a lot of volunteers. But this year this is going to be a bad year. We've had roughly half of the events already canceled with this virus. So it's we need the money, and we had an event that was requested. I would have loved to have had it, but they wanted to have a movie set up on there for some time, and we had to cancel that because it was a for-profit event. So we get requests like that. We some that they probably wouldn't like. They had I've forgotten what the campers were, but they wanted a jamboree in there, and we haven't even discussed those with them. I just turned them down. So, we are good neighbors. You may not think so, but we are, and we do what we think is good for the town. And I think as Mr. Champagne there, Campaign mentioned, if we fall apart, nobody's going to like what's there. And that's the last thing we want. It's the last thing any neighbors, I'm sure, want. I just wanted to say to him, thanks for picking up after your dog. I see you and your wife there almost every day with the dog.
Basically, I think that was one of the things, is that there was a film crew who had contacted us and who wanted to utilize the fairgrounds for some filming of a show or a movie or something of that sort.
Yeah.
And because it was a for-profit, we did turn them away. But again, it probably would have been a nice bit of income that we could have utilized.
I think it would have been a fun thing for Guilford itself.
Well, and it would have brought stuff to the, to the businesses in town and that. But again, we were respective of what we could and could not do, so we turned that down.
And Bob, there are a lot more than just that. I turn anywhere from 8 to a dozen away every year.
Right.
Tell me about the ones that you've turned away, Gil.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
Tell me about the ones that you've turned away so we can understand, what you've turned away.
Major food truck events that wanted 2 and 3 days. We had the possibility of a major Halloween event that they wanted to put on for a week long that would have been into the evening. Although the town is thinking of that, so that's a town event. Let's see, what else? We had the camporee. We had a movie night that one of the churches wanted to put on. Let's see, that was, of course, that's nonprofit, I guess, but.
Yeah, that's what I have to say. I mean, if you all sponsored the food truck event, I mean, you guys
Well,
are not for profit.
I did sponsor one, was it last year or year before? It didn't go real well, probably my fault. I let the guy talk me into how everything was going to be split and how it was going to be done, and it didn't work out too well, so I wasn't going to do that again.
Well, actually, we had one that was supposed to happen this year, but because of the virus, it got canceled out, and it was sponsored by the Ag Society.
That wasn't just sponsored, that was done by us. It was going to
So-
be done by us.
Barbara, you
Phil,
mentioned-
Phil, can I explain something?
Yes.
Phil, am I muted?
No.
Nope.
No, okay. Let me just explain what this document is that we're looking at. This is my attempt to, and this has evolved over the last several years, actually, my attempt to rewrite the special permit rules. And the document that you see in front of you has been revised several times. The revisions that are in red, if you can read them, are changes that were made as a result of the most recent discussion that was sponsored by Lou Federici. So what you see before you is my attempt to write something that I thought maybe would be that would satisfy not everyone, but most of the participants in this whole discussion. So as a result of the first draft of this motion did not contain the not-for-profit restriction, which was actually part of the original 1989 special permit, which came out, which was eliminated as a part of an earlier draft of this, as a result of the most recent discussion. I guess it was actually the first neighborhood discussion sponsored by Federici. I put back in the restriction that limits activities to those conducted or sponsored by a not-for-profit, just to make clear what this document is that we're looking at. And I'm not sure that it represents that anyone other than me actually supports it, but it's my idea of what might make sense and be satisfactory for most people. And at least it's an attempt to create a structure that we could use to delineate the rules and the standards and the criteria for future use of the fairgrounds.
Hey, George, has this document, has this draft been shared prior to this meeting with any of the adjoining neighbors?
It was shared with Lou Federici, and I don't know whether he distributed it to others or not. It was posted on the town's website last week, I believe.
I'm just not sure whether.
So I don't know. I can't answer that question. No.
I guess my question, Barbara, is have you come to some consensus with the neighbors in terms of what you all together feel is, a reasonable, because we really do want to find a way to help you. And certainly we want to look especially at, shortening the timeline, because we understand that 6-month timeline is very problematic, both for you and for town staff. But it's all the other stuff that goes into it. And I'm just curious, how did the meetings with Lou go? And have you finished with them? Are they done? Had you planned another one? Is this still an evolving discussion?
Well, from what the last one that we had, because we knew this meeting was coming up, we were trying to come up with a resolution that would hopefully be satisfactory to the majority of the people on both sides. I mean, I only brought up the for-profit thing is just because everybody, I think, I don't know what ideas that they had would take place there. Okay. And, if an opportunity, say like a film crew came up, that they wanted to utilize the Guilford Fairgrounds like they did downtown for one of the movies that came out, would there be a major objection to it, I guess is what I'm asking for, because it is a for-profit thing. I mean, is there limitations of what for-profit event could happen there? I mean, the nonprofits, I think we're good with that. We obviously don't have an issue. I think we've done very well of trying to support the nonprofits and having the proper events for the nonprofits there. And in all honesty, I did figure it out today. If we went with the 12 days, okay, other than the fair and the fireworks, the 6 running events, and allowing 3 private events, that's a total of 21 days between May 1st and October 31st. I don't think that's unreasonable. I really don't. And I think, again, with parameters that we're trying to put in and everything, I honestly think it's reasonable. I did speak with Jeff Hutchinson, and I think, George, he did get in touch with you.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Barbara, on item number 11, which was my draft coming out of the last meeting. Jeff Hutchinson, who's the Guilford police chief, suggested a revision of that. His suggestion is that that the police and the emergency services, fire department and other emergency services, be notified of all events to be taking place at the fairgrounds. And he felt that 14 days was satisfactory lead time in order for them to properly plan for anything that they might have to anticipate. So that would be their suggestion as to how that should be rewritten. No limit on the size. All events they should be informed of at least 14 days in advance.
George, the document we're looking at says 30 days.
Right. They said 14 days would be more than is adequate. It's not. They didn't feel 30 days was necessary.
Okay. All right.
George, my question would be: they're notified by us having it on the internet, isn't it? Well, we could just send them when we get it. What it is.
I think they probably want a more direct notification.
Gil,
okay. Yep.
Just to clarify that, in my discussion with Jeff, I told him we normally have a good list of events, usually by the beginning of the year. And once we had that list, that we would supply it to them. And he was fine with that.
Okay.
And if something comes up, in between that time, that, falls into whatever category we all agree to, then he just would want to be notified once we have a contract signed for something else.
No, before the contract signed.
Well, yeah. Well,
I have one thing, George, on the other before I forget. As far as a commercial event that Barb was talking about, if something special came up, is it reasonable to put in here that we could apply to the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval of it?
Well, that's reasonable as a relative term. So that's something that the commission is going to have to decide.
Right, that's what I'm saying. In other words, we'd like to do this. Do you think it's a real good thing? What do you think about it, yay or nay? And then we live with that. At least it gives us an opportunity to maybe bring up something that is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
The obvious concern is, and I do think that would be a reasonable possibility. The question is, are we basically granting a variance to our special permit every time something unique comes up, as opposed to, certainly if it's an event that everyone can agree sounds like a great event, is not going to be too impactful and happens to be, for profit. I think that the problem is you can generate a list of things where it's for profit and for sure you don't want it to happen. I mean, I'll joke and say you could run a motocross event on the fair. I mean, I'm not to say that you would do it, But
You've already had that past years. Go ahead.
So Phil, they could, make a movie scene from a movie as popular as Field of Dreams, and it becomes a destination.
Again,
Yeah,
I'm not sure I understand if the movie crew was being sponsored to be there by the Ag Society.
No, you're right on that, but I've tried not to do something like that.
Okay.
I felt that was skirting it a little bit, and I've never tried to do that.
Well, that's good, because I think that, the neighbors want to hear that, Gil. And I think they're reassured by the fact that you put the brakes on certain things that, didn't make sense.
Right.
Right.
Take the Renaissance Fair that a lot of people did not like. All right. We could have legally, under the regulations we have, we could have sponsored the whole thing and kept it going. And I just wouldn't do that. And not to make excuses for myself and the rest of the crew, but that was quite a while ago. And there's a new regime running the place. You don't think of something like that.
Yeah.
And, we're still wrong. No question about it. But, I just we hate to get blamed for it, for something that we were innocent, so to speak, of knowing.
Yeah, Phil, can I say something? I think, George, you might want to speak, since there's a fair amount of people on this call that may not have been part of previous calls. There's been discussions about this a year or so ago. So could you speak to some of the issues with what the current special permit is causing and the reasons why we're coming up with this? And specifically, one thing that I'll just mention for you, the special permit currently lists out certain types of events that are acceptable. The problem with having that in the special permit is you are always going to find more events that don't fit into whatever list you create. You could create a list of 100 events, either positive or negative, and you're still going to end up finding events that aren't going to work. That is why what you've presented here, George, doesn't try to list events, because that's something that that's not really a possibility. There's some other issues with the current special permit, if you could just touch on those.
Well, I think you're correct as to one of the main motivations associated with trying to do a set of criteria and controls like the ones that are in front of us, in that I found it very difficult to try to describe all the types of events that either might be allowed or the types of events that might not be allowed. I also found it very hard to try to describe in any meaningful or measurable way the size of the event, like how many people are going to be there, or how many cars are going to be there. I think that's very difficult to do. Even limiting the activities to nonprofit is a very difficult thing to do. I used the example, or maybe Gil used the example of, you had a car club that sponsored an event. They were a nonprofit, I think it was the Corvette Club or something like that. And they were clearly a nonprofit, and they could have used the fairgrounds and raced around there and made lots of noise and mud and everything with their cars, but that would have been fine. Guilford Subaru, when they used to be around, as a for-profit, could have done more or less the same thing, only they wouldn't have been allowed. So the distinction between for-profit and not-for-profit isn't necessarily a meaningful one, but it is still part of the current proposal. What this tries to do is focus on the number of days that the fairground is actually used for an event. That's the key measurable, that's the key variable here. And we focused on this number. It seems to be a reasonable number of days. I'm reflecting on what Gil just talked about. If a movie set wanted to come on the property for a week and be set up there for a week, that would use up 7 of the 12 days that they're allowed to have an event during any normal year, May to October, end of October year. I doubt that the fairgrounds would want to do that for 7 days unless it was a highly remunerative lease, regardless of whether it's a for-profit or not-for-profit. So the focus here is on limiting the number of days, limiting the hours of operation, making it clear that the other applicable laws are still in effect, and specifically the town noise ordinance, and also deal with the question, which has always been ambiguous over the years, as to whether or not they can have, the fairgrounds is allowed to have private events, namely meaning events that are limited to invited guests, like a wedding or a reunion or something like that. The current proposal is very restrictive in that only 3 days a year can a private event be held at the fairgrounds. So the focus on this is not trying to limit or describe the types of events that are allowed, because that became, at least in my mind, very difficult, but focus more on the number of days that events could occur.
Hey, George, I have a question, and I'll just open it up to anybody else, and I have not been on the commission for all that long. It's been less than 2 years. Where did the provision come in, or where did the idea come in to make it only nonprofit events?
That was part of the 1989 special permit.
Okay, so but
whose idea that was, I don't really know. I don't know where that idea came from.
My guess is it was probably to avoid large music type events.
Yes, that's always been the case at music events. That is, music events that are exclusively music, like a concert, are prohibited. That goes back to 1989. They're still prohibited. That would deal with things like a rock concert or the New Haven Symphony. Neither of those would be allowed.
I understand, but was there a noise ordinance in 1989?
No, there was not. There was not.
So there you go. You've got, this confluence of, issues. So, if there's a noise ordinance and the Ag Society were to have a for-profit, entity have an event, they'd still be under the noise ordinance.
That's correct. But what tends to happen with the noise ordinance is that clearly when you have a music event like the Lobster Fest or the fair, where there's going to be music, amplified music, it will create noise, that is, or music, depending on your definition, that exceeds the limits in decibels that's allowed to be associated with any event. So what then happens pursuant to the noise ordinance is that the applicant, the sponsor, the conductor of the activity goes to the Board of Selectmen, and they request an exemption from the noise ordinance in order to have the event. And then that noise ordinance is usually, or that exemption is usually granted. And then there's some other limits perhaps placed on it by, for example, hours of operation. What we've never had is, for example, we've never had a case that I know of where the Board of Selectmen refused to grant such an exemption. So maybe if if somebody wanted to have a rock and roll concert perceived to be undesirable, the Board of Selectmen might refuse to grant the noise exemption. That could happen, I suppose, but that hasn't happened yet.
And I just think that Gil has done a terrific job as to filtering as what type of events are going on. The fireworks, obviously they create, the noise can be heard miles away, type of thing. But it's a community event. The fair is a community event.
Yeah, right.
And Lobster Fest as well, so I think if the selectmen are looking too at the type of event that it is it, I think that if someone went to them, I think that's something that they would look at too. Obviously we do, but I think that's something that they would as well.
Dave Papalizzo's on here, I think. and I don't want to sandbag them, but we've been talking about something that I don't know anybody knows about yet that might happen soon that the planning and zoning doesn't know anything about. Dave, would you want to bring that up? Don't panic, guys.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was approached by a large group of parents whose kids are graduating this year from high school. And what they would like to do, the first thing they wanted to do was hold the graduation like the day of the fireworks and into the night, and then have the fireworks in the background. But because that's a town event, and I know the parking lot is sectioned off, we didn't think it was a good idea to do it that way. So we did propose to them that they could really pick another day or night to host the graduation where the kids can receive their diploma, whether it be on a screen or one by one, often without a screen, but be socially distanced apart. And parents could stay in their cars at the same time, stay in their vehicles.
Like a drive?
I'm sorry?
Like a drive-in?
Yes, correct. So once I explained to a lot of these parents about the 6-month notification, their first thing was, and I think there were probably over 20 or 30 parents that contacted me. They were going to the school board first to see what their opinion was. And then I unfortunately gave them George Crawl's name after that. So I'm sorry about that, George, if they start to contact you. But so we're going to see where they go with the school board. But again, it takes us away from the 6-month period. But it is for the kids in high school.
As I said, I think we all acknowledge that restriction is something that we really need to modify.
Yes, I agree.
This is Gil again. You can't believe how hard it is because you want specific dates. And I go away for the winter, and with a 6-month notification,
right,
they don't even have their dates set. They don't know what they have to get them voted by their board. So when I gave you the one for last year, I had to make a couple changes in it on dates because I just kind of picked the same weekends that they had the previous year to stay within that 6-month period. So it's very, very unmanageable.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that. And we really want to work to alleviate that.
Thank you.
I
I can have a good vacation.
Barb, I don't think you ever answered officially that whether or not you're fine with George's proposed item number 3 on this list.
I guess my question would be is something like Gil was saying. What if a movie company came in and wanted to be able to utilize the fairgrounds?
Okay.
Using
So
that because
you're
that-
uncertain. You're uncertain about that as written.
Well, what about just adding to the end of it, unless a different a commercial event is approved by the planning and zoning ahead of time? That's all.
I mean,
Sure.
They can
Planning and
say-
zoning, we'd have to discuss as a commission whether or not we thought that was in our purview, but yeah, okay. I just wanted
I
to know.
mean, I guess, Phil, if that type of line was added in, you would be able to at least put it on one of your agendas, and the commission could discuss it, which would still give us enough time to get back to whomever to say, sorry, we can't do it, or if the commission felt.
So something to the effect of events that are, for profit in nature or not for profit. I hate to use a double negative. Would need to be reviewed and approved in advance by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you actually do that now. You review them and you decide whether or not you think they're okay. That was what I remember the motion way back when.
That was the intent, yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that given the timing that we have, that we kick this both to the commissioners and to the public for questions and comments. Are you all right with that?
Yes, I just wanted to say that that item number 11 as George said, has been rewritten because Jeff Hutchins said that really P&Z has no jurisdiction over the number of, they don't have jurisdiction over a police matter. So I think what Jeff Hutchins probably has submitted to George, and George, I think you said you have the update covers everything that needs to be covered for that item.
He didn't, he and I had a phone conversation yesterday about this. I don't have anything in writing from him, but he basically said all events, they should be informed of all advance at least 14 days in advance.
Which would be fine for us to put on there.
Yeah.
As number 11.
Right.
Yeah. And that's more reasonable.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's different from the notice of commercial type events that Phil just talked about. That would be a different process that would require actual planning and zoning, at least the way Phil was describing it, at least the way I understood it. That would require planning and zoning approval to allow a commercial event.
That would be correct, but I mean, they still have to be notified.
Right.
If planning and zoning approved it, then they would be notified.
Right.
But they're two different things. You're talking about events of more than 200 people, and
No, that would not be. That wouldn't be the 200 people, 100 cars. That would.
It's stricken.
That would be. That's not. Jeff Hutchinson did not think that was a viable recommendation. He
Okay.
wanted all of that. He wanted to be informed of all events.
All events.
Yeah.
So right.
Yeah.
So we're going to ignore 100 cars or 200
Yeah,
people.
that was an arbitrary attempt to suggest a size threshold, which he didn't.
Listen, the fewer items we have in this, that makes it, as clear as possible to neighbors, all residents of Guilford, and the Ag Society. That's great.
Yes.
Barb, you okay with us going to questions?
Sure, that'll be fine.
Okay. Aaron, can we unscreen share?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll start. Commissioners, do you have any additional questions on the items that are being discussed? And what I would also say to the public is, I think you guys get a sense for, our concern about this and our desire to craft it in a way that is both respectful for neighbors and anyone with a vested interest, as well as the Ag Society. I think there's a balance here that we want to make sure that we protect you guys, as well as try and fashion a way forward that is workable. So that being said, any questions from commissioners?
I have one more question. George, under the current guidelines, what's the total number of events allowed?
There's no limit on the number of events under the current special permits.
Okay, thank you. Besides just our general review.
Correct.
Yeah, and Phil, I'll just say this. I grew up on 90 Lovers Lane, across from the entrance to the fairgrounds. My parents built the house in 1961, when the road was still a dirt road, and the fair moved from the green to the fairgrounds when in probably 1969.
69.
That's right. So our lives changed because we had a dairy farm across the street from our house. And I got to tell the neighbors around that whole area of Whitfield Street, Boston Street, your life changes. You do adjust. And this is different. We have to address it. And we're trying to do that in a responsible way so that the town character is maintained. The institutions that have made Guilford what it is are allowed to continue and hopefully prosper. And the neighborhood doesn't change dramatically in a way that degrades the character of the town. So, I understand the Ag Society's need for revenue. I just think we have to craft it in a way that they can do it consistent with the needs of the town and the neighborhood. So,
Scott, you want to say something?
Yeah, one follow-up question with my question about total events for Barb or Gil. Can you tell me, do you know do you have an idea over the last few years how many days you've been averaging having events? So that we can compare it to this 21 that's on the proposal right now.
I'll tell you, it's in my office, but give me a second for this year of how many were planned. 7, 8.
I'm just trying to think. I mean,
there are actually 17 days this year were planned.
Okay.
You're going to get about 8.
I just wanted to be able to present to everyone on the call so they understand kind of what we've been averaging over the last few years compared to what is proposed in the 21 here.
Actually gone down.
Yeah, I was going to say there had been a couple events that we've had over the past 3 years. That one of them we didn't have, or 2 of them we didn't have on the list this year because they had some management changes, but they are still interested in coming back. So I'm gonna stick my neck out there, and I don't think Gil will disagree with me that we've probably had 20 days of events over the past 3-4 years.
It was on beyond that when we had more days. I don't think there's been more than 13, 14 events in the last, looks good, Barbara. What is it?
I'm sorry, I'm eating my dinner.
This is Jake.
When we had the Renaissance Fair, we had a couple other events. So yeah, we were up around 20, but gosh, I think that was, oh Lord, maybe 2015, 2016, something like that. I have all the records. I've got them all in notebooks. So I could give you exact figures of how many we had each year if you really wanted it.
Jamie, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Phil. And thanks to Sean for that sort of history of the fairgrounds. I mean, as a fairly newcomer to the town, that was super helpful to know. But my question is more procedurally. I mean, I'm thinking back now to when we heard the majority of the public comment, an hour ago or so. Notification seems to be a concern of mine. I mean, it's the last meeting and also this meeting, we were told by members of the public that they didn't receive a notification. So can I just get some clarity on the sort of procedure of that? I think one member of the public had talked about like a half-mile radius. I mean, sort of what is this based on? Who do you have to be directly abutting the property? I'm just wondering because, I think what I'm hearing in general is this kind of need for some structured notification and awareness of what's going to happen at the fairgrounds, but also, I'm deeply respectful that the fairgrounds is volunteer run and they own the property and they're, trying to make a go of this that's consistent with the town. So I see the tension here, but I'm just, stuck on this point of notification and the procedure for that.
In reality, Jamie, it's usually 100-foot radius of the fairgrounds. I did 150-foot radius of the fairgrounds actually, and we have to, by planning and zoning's rules, send out certified letters to all those, and we print the list right off of the GIS site. It allows us to do that, the labels and everything for everyone. And I will say that there were people who did not either pick up their letter, or there was attempts made and the post office returned some of them.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Wallace, you have a question?
A couple questions and a couple of comments. First off, for George, we're going to have, we are going to be the policemen or et cetera over the regulations of events and when they happen and approval of those events, whether we do it at the beginning of the year when the first list is submitted or or right now 6 months out.
Under the current regulations, the fairgrounds is supposed to notify us 6 months in advance, correct?
And
Under the
we're
current special permit.
And we're looking to mitigate that and stay away some of the. And
So George, under your proposal, we're not approving any events.
That's not my proposal. That's a sort of collective proposed structure, yes. But the way it's written now, there is no notice requirement, correct?
Okay, because we've been at this for eons. This is like my third rodeo with it. I even go back further, and I'll give the Ag Society some credit. I remember Barb complaining about the Jazz Fest, that they're no longer going to be here because they've stiffed you for the electrical bills.
Well, we also did have a rodeo. We did have a rodeo down there too once. The police.
Yeah, I can remember that one, and then I remember the Renaissance Fair when I first came on P&Z, and when we started kicking this around back in 2016.
Exactly.
But it's time to put it to bed and let's get this.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So there any other questions from commissioners? Otherwise, I'm going to put it to the public. Okay. Would anyone in the public like to ask any questions? We're going to go questions first, then comments in support and comments against, and then we will close.
Mr. Chairman, we have Albert Kraus raising his hand.
Speak up,
yeah,
Albert.
thank you. Yeah, hi. It's just a question, and I appreciate this healthy discussion, and everyone here cares so much. But I want to come back, and it was just raised really as a procedural point. But to me, it seems to be a very relevant point to both sides of this, building structures, permitting uses, which is very complicated, I appreciate. And I think we all want it to succeed and maintain as a Guilford unique kind of a situation. But one thing, despite the fact that I was shocked to hear 100-foot radius in certified mail, because I got to tell you, we have people running around our house all the time, and we've been locked down for months. So we haven't gotten certified anything. So I don't know. And I live within smelling distance, right? And it's certainly within 100 feet. So, and I heard from other people on the call that they're not hearing it. So I think part of the dilemma, and I think there are a lot of positive intentions, because I know Ed, I know Gil, I live in the house they grew up in, at least Gil. And
took away my bedroom.
There you go. And you know, I think everyone has a positive intent to do the right thing. I think there is a gap in some communication and in awareness. And like, for instance, because I'm all for a lot of what's going on and actually having additional structures. I mean, obviously I have a personal specific issue of they're all clustered right where I look at the fairground, right? But and I just found out about it Monday. And that part concerns me, because I don't know how many other people only found out about something Monday, didn't find out about it at all, or whatever. So I am concerned about that communication schedule and situation, because I think there's obviously hard to get any group to a specific total agreement, but I think everyone's well intentioned to try to make it run right. Because like Russ Campaign was saying, and others, you know, and Gil was saying, you know, we don't want things to wheel out of control and have like, you know, a suburban residential development on the grounds, right? It's so much better being what it is and what it stands for and what it should be, right? So I'm just saying this communication part, I think, could be better. I know I'm new. I know I'm not aware of the history of all this issue and all these situations. I'm close by, so I care a lot. But I do think that communication could be stronger. And I'll throw in a brainstorm, and it may be not possible, but the dilemma of what kinds of events, I think, is a concern about the types of events that could be and shouldn't be, and everyone has a different judgment. But the thought occurred to me is should planning and zoning be the group to do that? Or is there a consortium of residents and agricultural members who could together agree on what was good, not good in some reasonable way outside of the structure of the government structure, but as a set up agreement? Because I think if it worked well with judgment by a group, everyone would be happy.
I think the problem with that, Albert, is the local group wouldn't have any authority over the ag society.
Right.
In the same capacity that a special permit does.
Regarding the notification, George, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but our planning and zoning rules require a certain level of notification, and we don't even see or hear their proposal if they haven't met those requirements, correct, of notification?
No, the regulations require that the applicant notify property owners. It's actually abutting or adjoining property owners with regard to a special permit, and they have to notify them by certified mail.
Right.
That's a mailing that does not require that the recipient return the receipt to the applicant. But what the applicant has to do is submit to us copies of the fact that they mailed those certificates.
Correct.
Whether or not the person's actually received the certificate of mailing, we have no way of knowing.
Sure, but it's our planning and zoning. It's the town of Guilford P&Z rules that are governing what has to happen for notification.
Right.
Correct.
And to the best of my knowledge, the applicant here, the Ag Society, did provide the required notification to the property owners as per the assessor's record, as Barbara described. That was for the original public hearing. That's what the requirement is for. As you know, in this particular case, and it's especially exacerbated by the current circumstance, we've continued the public hearing over several months, so that it's more than possible, in fact, quite likely. Some people may have been aware of the first public hearing, which was probably, I don't even remember, maybe it was in March.
I think it was the middle week in March. I think.
Right,
like
and then the subsequent public hearings, continuations of that original, there would be no further mailing of notice to those property owners. So many of the property owners, I think, are talking about this continuation that they didn't know about.
Right. So there's if there's issues with the notification process for planning and zoning, then that needs to be brought to who in terms of making an amendment?
The commission.
Okay.
So you'll work on that for us, George?
Sure.
Yeah, well, George, look my name up. George, look my name up. Albert Krause. You used to live across the street from you before you moved. You know, I'll guarantee you we didn't get anything. And it sounds like other people didn't either. And maybe I was defined as not abutting or adjoining. I don't know how y'all define those words. But, you know, I think there's a broader issue of communication in that regard, and whether it was done exactly right. I don't want to go technicality on this because I think everyone has the right intentions, but I was pretty surprised. I didn't hear about anything until a couple of days ago.
Can I also mention something, that not only do we have to send out the certified mails, but there is also a planning and zoning notice of application sign that was posted at the fairgrounds per planning and zoning regulation. For the initial.
Irrespective of that, that sign had some problems.
Yes, it did.
So let's not even go down the road on that sign. But
the notice of hearing is also published in the Guilford Courier.
Right. So
those are the legal requirements.
Are there any other? Yes, Mr. Schaefer, would you like to speak?
I have a lot of comments, but I have two questions. What is the definition of a private party? A private party simply means can be anything as long as it's private. I don't know what that means. George, what does that mean?
That means a party that's by invitation only. It's not open to the general public.
It doesn't say so.
It does say that.
We're drafting what amounts to legislation. A private party, I want to talk later about this. The present administration of the society is terrific. We all agree with that. I don't know what's coming next year or the year after that or the year after that. And a word, two words like private party could mean anything.
It
There
does.
has to be more precision. The
Okay.
second
I would be, I think we would all welcome any suggestions for improved language.
Well, I'll be glad to talk to you at some length. I mean, I'm not the sophisticate like you are in the subject. But
right. Yeah.
it seems to me we're citizens, but private party is meaningless. And frankly, if it's even weddings or something, we may want to talk about substantively. But the expression is hopelessly vague.
I think I think the intent is to reflect an event that's not a public event. So perhaps we can come up with a tighter definition of what that is.
Well, I think so. I mean, I'm not suggesting, I think the question of what the events should be is something that requires some degree of precision for the reasons I'll state later. The other question is, talk on the noise ordinance. If the event is too loud and violates the noise ordinance, that's after the fact. That doesn't solve the problem, because then you have to call the police. The police may or may not come. And it's not the anticipation of the violation of the noise ordinance. So, I mean, that doesn't help the neighbors at all. If something's too loud, what do? You go to the cops. The cops may or may not, by the time it all gets through, the event will be over. So the noise ordinance is really irrelevant.
Can I answer to that, Mr. Schaefer?
Sure.
When I spoke to Chief Hutchinson, that was something I specifically brought up because someone mentioned that the last go around about whether the police show up or not. And this is what he told me, if there's a complaint made about noise, they have to send an officer to the home of the complainant. The officer has to go with the complainant to the area that they were standing at and do a measurement of noise from that point. That is what he had told me. And if there is an issue, then they will take action on it.
Well, but that's after the fact.
Well, Mr. Schaefer, I think it's true. I mean, I think that's true of most criminal activity. You don't arrest the person anticipating that they're going to commit a crime. You can't make the arrest until after the crime has been committed. So the system is based on deterrence. They do have the ability to fine. They have other enforcement abilities that the police department does. That's the reality of the noise ordinance. The noise ordinance could be modified or strengthened. The penalties could be modified or strengthened as well. So that's something that the Board of Selectmen might very well take up.
I think I've misstated my view. Obviously, that's true. My point is that the restrictions on use in advance should take cognizance of the fact that the noise ordinance, as a practical matter, is ineffective to protect the from excess noise. That goes to the use in it. For example, you've already provided that there can be no, as such, music events. That's because a music event would presumably be very noisy and wouldn't be good. And so when we confront this, and I'll talk about this a little later, what we should be doing is talking about the uses with some precision, with a view toward protecting against excessive noise. It's like an injunction, like anything else, but the restriction should be on use to make it less likely there will be noise.
Mr. Schaefer, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Although
I'm not on the commission. I mean, okay.
No, I'm just going to ask you this. The concerts that are held on the green by Park and Rec, do you have any objection to the noise that comes from them?
I have no right to object to that. And so the answer to that is, in some occasions I have, but I have no right to object to that. This is not that place. This is this place. So I don't, it's not really relevant what happens in the rest of town.
George?
Yes.
I think we've got some work to do on our motion.
Yes.
So what I am going to suggest is that we continue this meeting because we still have quite a bit of business that we have to process and we still have some work to do. So would one of the commission members like to make a motion to continue this?
Could I ask a question first and then before we do that?
If it's quick.
It is. It's just, it goes to this point of process. I think that I agree with what everybody else said about the importance of the Ag Society and that I don't know anyone who doesn't support helping the Ag Society to be a success, and that there is clearly a pathway forward for everybody to come to an agreement. My question is that I thought at the end of the last meeting, you requested that the members of the Ag Society, and I don't know if George too, to engage in a discussion to try and come up with answers like that. And I don't know what happened to that process.
There was a meeting with Lou Federici and the Ag Society and several of the neighbors.
Okay.
There were two.
Yeah. So, whether or not another one of those can happen, I will certainly reach out to Lou and Barbara. And again, with George trying to craft a motion that reflects something that we all want. But again, I think what we're going to do right now is, because we have so much additional business to do and it's going to get late, I'm going to make a motion to continue this to our next meeting. Would someone like to second that?
I'll second it, Phil.
That's,
Okay, we'll do a quick
that's just for everybody's information. That would be April.
May 20th.
June.
April.
May 20th.
Okay. And again, what I will try and do is get this on the front end, so we're not all getting this late. Sean, are you okay with continuing?
I am. Aye.
Richard Wallace,
Yes.
Scott Edmund,
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea,
Yes.
Jamie Stein.
Yes.
I will also vote to continue. Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
We will continue this to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, can I just, it's nothing to do with the permits or anything.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Just to let everybody know, the neighbors and everybody, we usually have our meetings the third Thursday of every month. We welcome you guys to come to our meetings to see what.
Dave,
What?
fourth Thursday of the month.
Next meeting.
Okay. If you could let us know when that is, that'd be great. Okay, so that said, why don't we grab, this was the CK Architects with the special permit for the barns. Everyone up on that? Sean, you want to read the motion?
I'm looking, oh yeah, very top. Hold on.
I got it if you want.
No, I got it right here.
Okay.
This is for the Zables?
Yes.
Okay. Proposed, voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a special permit for Wendy and Bill Zabel at 38 South Fair Street, map 32, lot 55, to a 24, is it 24 by 26? Or do we?
32 by 26.
32, okay. Barn is shown on Zabel Barn, 6 sheets prepared by CK Architects. This application is approved with the following conditions. Number 1, the application is approved based on a finding that it conforms with the zoning code. The special permit is effective on May 8th and upon filing with the town clerk.
Good.
Second.
Very good. Discussion?
Were there any conditions on that one from Aaron or Kevin or anyone?
Yes, from me.
There was.
Just erosion controls.
Erosion control conditions.
Second. Aaron's.
Aaron's memo of May 4th.
Okay.
Yeah, they were read in.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Discussion? Yeah, I think it's a good application. It meets, checks all the boxes. It'll probably be a lovely barn. Any questions? Discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor? I will do a roll call vote. Sean Cosgrove,
Aye.
Richard Wallace,
Aye.
Scott Edmund.
Aye.
Frank, I don't believe you were here for the discussion part of that, right?
What's that?
I don't believe you were at the meeting when we were presenting that. I think you came in a little bit later.
Yeah, but I heard it from the last meeting too. But either way,
Okay, I'm just going to have you abstain on that one because I don't think you were here for the first part. I think we should be able to talk. Jane, you can say your vote. You do what you want. Jamie Stein.
Aye.
I will also vote in favor of this. Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Okay, very good. That one passes. One down. Jeffrey Rice, 40 East Bear House Hill Road, special permit to build 30 by 30 barn. A very handsome barn, by the way. Voted the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a special permit application for Jeffrey Rice at 40 East Bear House Hill Road, map 93, lot 91-8. A 30 by 30 barn as shown on zoning location survey lot 18, the Woodlands, prepared by Anderson Engineering and Surveying, dated March 4th, 2020, revised 3/18/20, and carriage barn for Abby and Jeffrey Rice, prepared by Barnyard, dated 4/3/20. Applicant is approved with the following conditions. Do we
I
have any
had
other
two on there.
There were conditions by Aaron Mannix, our zoning enforcement, regarding silt fencing and an as-built. This application is approved based on a finding that it conforms with the zoning code. Special permit is effective on May 8th and upon filing with the town clerk.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Again, I think it's pretty straightforward. It checks all the boxes. So without objection, I'll call the vote. Sean Cosgrove?
Aye.
Richard Wallace?
Aye.
Scott Edmund?
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea?
abstain.
Jamie Stein?
Aye.
I will vote in favor. Matt Yurzinski?
Yay.
Thank you very much. We have another barn, which is good. Town of Guilford Park and Recreation, Chatfinch Island, Chatfinch Island Road, Coastal Area Management Site Plan for construction of an accessible walkway. Sean, you got the motion on that one? You want me to grab it?
I do. No, I don't.
Okay, voted the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a coastal area management site plan application for the town of Guilford at Chatfinch Island Park, map 23 lot 5 for construction of an accessible walkway is shown on an application dated 3/1/20, including plans prepared by Summerhill Engineering dated 3/1/20. This application is approved with the following conditions. There are some conditions from Aaron.
Kevin.
I don't have those conditions.
Kevin's erosion controls.
Okay. Anything
That
else?
was it.
Do we have anything from Szymanski on that one?
No conditions.
The application is approved based on a finding that it conforms with the zoning code and is consistent with the coastal management policies of the state of Connecticut.
Second.
I mean, I think it's a great project.
Me too.
Yeah. I was just surprised there was nobody from the public that was concerned with the additional traffic or how this was not in keeping with the park.
To be honest with you, I
That's
was
the
a
only comment
little
I have.
surprised too, from the standpoint that we got a lot of objection when there was discussion about building a gazebo, but I guess a walking path to a picnic table is a lot less egregious.
That's the only thing that I wanted to say is I was a little surprised we didn't hear from anyone about that.
But we're making our recreational spaces more accessible to those who are in need, so it's hard to object to that.
That's always been a DEP's big concern of public access to the waterways.
Yes, that's great.
So Phil, sorry, I'm public, so I don't belong here. But I will say I watched that one, and I get to there quite a bit in Chaffinch Island because I keep my boat in the winter at Browns. But I feel that way publicly. I wondered what was happening. I noticed what was happening, and it changes the nature of the space slightly in a positive way, but it allows that kind of public access. So I think that's the answer of why no one objects. It's for a good reason, right?
Well, there's a little history behind it too, but thank you. So we have a motion, a second. I'll call the vote. Sean Cosgrove?
Aye.
Richard Wallace,
Aye.
Scott Edmund,
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea,
Abstain.
Jamie Stein.
Aye.
I will vote in favor of this motion. Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Thank you. The motion passes.
So for the next one is the Calvin Lee.
Next one is
Calvin Lee.
existing athletic shed at Calvin Lee, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So this is
So,
Guilford Park and Rec, South 280 South Union, map, whatever, map 41, lot 18, zone R3, coastal area management site plan for construction of 12 by 16, addition to existing athletic equipment shed. And you want to tackle the motion on that one?
yeah, sure. Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a coastal area management and site plan application for the town of Guilford at Calvin Lee School, 280 South Union Street, map 41, lot 18, for construction of a, I'm assuming this is, the dimensions are correct, 12 by 16 feet, foot addition to a shed as shown on an application dated 3/1/20, including plans prepared by Summerhill Engineering dated 3/1/20. This application is approved with the following conditions. Number one, the application is approved based on a finding that it conforms with the zoning code and is consistent with the coastal management policies of the state of Connecticut.
Aaron, do we have any conditions on this one?
No, we don't.
Okay. So we have a motion. Does someone want to second that?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion, concerns? I mean, I think it's a great, it's a great project. It's an Eagle Scout project. It doesn't have any sedimentation problems. It sounds like they're doing all the site work within one day. So that's not an issue. So any other comments? Great. We have a motion. We have a second. I'll call the vote. Sean Cosgrove.
Aye.
Richard Wallace.
Aye.
Scott Edmund.
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea.
Abstain.
Jamie Stein.
Aye.
I will vote in favor of this motion. Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Thank you. The motion passes. We obviously tabled the Agricultural Society's amendment to the special permit, but we did close on Agricultural Society map 40 lot 138 zone R3 special permit to construct 4 additional pole barns. Sean, do we have a motion on this one?
We do. Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a special permit for the Guilford Agricultural Society at 111 Lovers Lane, map 40, lot 138, to, I'm assuming it means to build 4 additional pole barns as shown on an application dated 2/12/2020 and general location survey for Guilford Agricultural Society, prepared by Anderson Engineering and Surveying Associates dated September 3rd, 2013, revised 7/1/14. The application is approved with the following conditions. The application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code. The special permit is effective on May 8th, 2020, and upon filing with the town clerk.
Second.
Discussion. So I have a quick question. And it goes back to a discussion of what other uses could be allowed by right, George. So, I mean, you couldn't go and start doing commercial storage in these buildings. You could store the goods of the Ag Society as their own product, but you really can't expand the commercial use of these buildings, correct?
Under the current special permit, the activities are limited to those of a nonprofit nature, going back to the 1989. So they'd have to, the use of that building would be subject to the same rules as the use of the fairgrounds generally.
Okay.
Was that your question?
It's my question. I guess the concern I have is the potential unforeseen, things that I'm not thinking of. There are smarter people out there than me. are there any uses that could be happening on this?
You said by right. I mean, there are certain uses that are allowed by right in residential zones, principally residential uses, but I don't think that's in the cards here. So the use of these barns would be subject to the same rules that apply to the existing barns and the property generally.
And to the use of, you know, your personal property on a residential lot.
Well, there's no residence on this lot, so but it's not it can't be accessory to any residential use. So
No,
it's actually the
but
uses
Phil-
of the Ag Society.
But
And
Phil, you're kind of referring to the Ag Society potentially having extra space and maybe offering it to a private entity that wants to store something
for
else
rent?
there.
No, they could not. They would not be allowed to do that.
Okay, all right.
That's kind of what I wanted to cover.
Does that go to your point?
Yes.
Just like if you owned a residential lot, you couldn't build a barn. You couldn't build a building on your lot and rent it to, J. Crew to store warehouse products, or to the boatyard to store boats. You could only
Well,
use.
I wouldn't want to have J. Crew as a client.
Right. I don't know why I thought it was true, but no, it cannot be used for commercial purposes. It's a residential zone. It can be used by the nonprofit entity that that conducts the activities on the fairgrounds pursuant to the special permit.
I will comment that I was skeptical when we first got the application, but I honestly have come to the conclusion that I think the eventual construction of these buildings will actually be better with respect to the neighborhood. It'll allow the storage of the Ag Society's equipment, and let's just not that the barrels are clutter, but if they're out of sight, I think that would be an improvement for a lot of people. I think the buildings are in keeping. I think just having them will save the Ag. Not that saving the Ag Society money is a way factor for us, but I think it would be a benefit for them. So I am in favor of this.
I'd like
And
to.
I would just echo that very briefly and just say that I'm coming around to that too. And what I failed to mention is that growing up on Lover's Lane, I'm very familiar with that creek. And, someone mentioning the sheen on that water, it was always there. So, it was always there.
Okay.
I agree. I think they're going to be a wonderful additional upgrade to the property.
Right.
Yeah, this is Jamie. I mean, I think that initially in our first meeting, I didn't understand the data driving, why they needed to construct the additional buildings, 4 additional buildings. But I think after listening to them and thinking about the costs that they incur for renting tents, seems to make sense in the long term for them. So I've come.
I also think that I took Russ Campaign's comments, from the standpoint, he does a lot of great projects around town, and I think if he objected to the design and or spacing, he wouldn't have a problem speaking up.
Sure.
Well,
I can see he's still here, so
that
I
actually
can speak about you.
that goes with what I was gonna say, is that that's a subjective opinion of Russ's, and I definitely can understand the neighbor's opinion that seeing 4 barns in a row instead of 1 barn is in his thought was going to be a negative. I can definitely see that point of view as well. So that's definitely.
But the overriding point that he made was that if the Ag Society cannot maintain financial viability, the Guilford Fair goes away, or it has to find another venue.
But I don't know if that's something that we can really.
And think about it also from the standpoint of the amount of time that they won't have to spend erecting tents.
Right.
That's right. So the prep time goes down.
And
I mean, so you don't have guys working in your backyard for a week before the Guilford Fair erecting, because these are big tents.
I grew up. I told you I grew up across the street from those fairgrounds. I mean, it was It was the Wild West show because before they regraded that field that used to be a dairy farm, every single year there would be a big rainstorm, and there would be a 2-acre lake in that field.
No, there's only a.
And in the wintertime, we would skate on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Any more comments? Yeah, Richard?
Just one. I asked Barbara last week about, was this going to be designed for off-season storage? And yes, that was one of the concerns the neighbors have had for years about seeing things outside for the whole winter.
Any more comments from commissioners? So we have a motion. We had a second, correct, Aaron?
Yes, I would just ask, I had recommended a condition in that for proper erosion controls, if we could include that.
Not out there.
in the
Second conditions for erosion controls.
I don't get the sense that these barns are going up in the next 30 days, so.
No, it should still be part, make sure it's part of it.
Yeah, if you could just make that part of the special permit, that would be great. So we have a motion, a second. I'll call the vote. Sean Cosgrove?
Aye.
Richard Wallace?
Yes.
Scott Edmund?
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea?
Yes.
Jamie Stein?
Aye.
I will also vote in favor of this. Matt Yurzinski?
Yay.
Motion passes. All right, and at least the building side of this done. Thank you. All right.
Is Mark still here?
Yeah, what do we have to do for Larkins?
This is the site plan application. So Russ Campaign is here, as well as I believe Mark and Andrew Larkins.
Great. Where's Russ? Oh, there you are, Russ. I just unmuted Russ. And Andrew, do you want me to unmute you? Andrew unmuted himself. Very good.
Okay, I'm Russell Campaign, and Andrew is still here. I don't think Mark is still here, but we're here before you to present a site plan modification or a site plan approval for 43 Driveway. The Larkins have retained me to look at their site and basically address additional need for office space on the property, as well as some rearranging of some of the utility structures that are on the eastern side of the property. So first, let's start with the office. Basically, they're finding that the family is growing into the business and they need additional space and private offices. So they're looking to take what is a portion of the existing Butler building, the metal building, and build a new office that's just forward of it, consistent with the front property line setbacks, but also in a way that can screen the existing building a little. So we're designing it as a barn. It's freestanding and has basically 2 offices upstairs, a breakout room, meeting room on the first floor, and a reception area. And so we can show you what that looks like. But we've been before design review, and they've received it and feel it's a real positive addition, and it will screen and make a better streetscape. It's in keeping with line of buildings along the road. And they liked it so much that they actually asked us for the other barn that we're proposing, which is going to consolidate some of the utility storage structures for the fuel and the salt shed that they have. They asked us to actually move it up as close to the front property line as we can in order to sort of team it with the new building and screen some of the parking behind, as well as the public works building from the new development across the street. So if you go to the next image, we can look, yeah. So this is the salt shed that's proposed. Again, we received a variance for this to keep it within the non-conforming side setback, because which we received. But basically, it sits with the parking and access in the front corner of the building and or of the lot, and allows for the salt storage in the larger building, and a fuel storage that's in a separate building now is being consolidated and attached, and then an enclosure for the dumpster for the property. So it is a nice kind of barn-like building in keeping with the same architectural style as the proposed office. And again, is set up in a position on the property to screen some of the parking and truck storage behind. We can continue down and sort of see what the office looks like. The layout of the office is fairly modest. It's sort of barn proportions with reception and entry on the east side of the building off of the parking. With the reception, there's a stair up and a bathroom that's handicapped accessible, and then a conference room, sort of gathering meeting space for them in the back. And then upstairs, there's 3 private offices with some storage and a conference area. And going down, you can see outside, it's again, looking somewhat barn-like, somewhat agricultural. We feel that sort of fits their needs and their style, and I think will fit into the neighborhood in that area quite well with the barns of the restored barns that are the daycare, which are within view. And basically the 3-dimensional image shows how it looks and how it screens the existing low-profile Butler building behind. And the 3-dimensional image down on the bottom shows that where it sits on the front of the property kind of holds the streetscape and helps to screen the parking. So from a site plan, we are offsetting and received a variance also for the nonconformity of our impervious surface coverage. So the new coverage we're proposing, we're offsetting by installing pervious pavers on a portion of the existing parking area to offset any additional area. And then we've worked through with Janice and have a letter from her approving a new retention system that will catch all water that's coming off of our site toward the road and into the existing town drainage area. It will catch that into a small depression, and there's a subsurface drainage system that basically will filter and infiltrate that instead of what now goes directly into the storm drain, which then goes into the Long Island Sound. So it's a great improvement. I will note that there's a trench drain that's proposed, but they are proposing to repave the whole of the parking area, which will allow us to actually drain into this without the need for the trench drain. And that was approved by Janice as an option for us if we did repave and were able to regrade the drainage into there and catch all of that off before it goes into the storm drain. So I think, you know, we've gotten very good feedback both from the Zoning Board of Appeals as well as design review. I think they were very pleased with the proposal and what it was doing both short-term and long-term for the property as an improvement. And we're able to receive all the variances we need. And I think we have positive letters from all of the various staff associated with the improvements. I don't know, Andrew, do you need to add anything or is that covered?
No, as always, Russ, that's a beautiful presentation. Obviously, I think it's just all in all, it's a huge upgrade to an improvement to the piece of property. You know, obviously the drainage is going to be a lot better too. So I think it's a win-win.
I will note one other thing. So all of the lighting we're proposing is full cutoff in the front and will be open, you know, during hours of operation. We did have sort of a conversation about some of the existing lighting that's on the existing buildings. And there's some floods, but they're only utilized during storm events when they're loading sand and moving the trucks through in the evenings. The business itself really only operates during daylight hours. And so we sort of agreed, and they sort of felt it was okay to have these spots that are not full cutoff remain, but they're on a switch that would be only utilized during storm events. But all of the new proposed lighting that's on our new Schultz shed, as well as the new building, will all be a full cutoff style that meets the dark skies initiatives and such, and will be on during working hours.
There are several letters, Russ. Do you mind if we read them in?
Yep.
Okay, hold on while we're doing that. I'm having fun with this launch here. First letter is from Kevin McGee, environmental planner, site plan review, Larkins, Pauline, Revocable Trust, 43 driveway, Guilford. The applicant is proposing to remove several existing structures at the property and construct 2 new buildings on the property. The applicant has completed the checklist to guide low impact development best management practices and is proposing a recommended practice with the construction of a pervious parking area. The impervious surface coverage for the property is currently 55%. Impervious surface coverage allowing in a I-1 zone is 40% in order to reduce the existing impervious surface coverage to 54% to make up for the proposed new office. The applicant is proposing to remove an existing paved parking area and replace it with pervious pavers with the installation of an underground infiltration system. In order to make sure that the natural resources are protected, I recommend the following conditions of approval. 1, the town of Guilford enforcement officer shall be notified to inspect the sedimentation and erosion control measures prior to any site work. Soil erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained until vegetation is established or suitable material is installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer, I think. A licensed engineer shall oversee the construction of the pervious parking area and underground stormwater management system to verify that the construction was conducted in accordance with the plans and best management practices. The licensed engineer shall provide a final report to the zoning enforcement officer. 3, a written maintenance and operation manual for the stormwater management system located at the subject site should be submitted to the town engineer and zoning enforcement officer. The manual should provide provisions for inspections, maintenance of stormwater system and pervious pavers, and yearly reports to the town engineer. I think there's another one. You want to grab, Sean, you want to grab the one from Aaron?
Yeah, sure. So it's dated May 4th regarding Larkins, and the applicant is here before you seeking site plan approval for the construction of a 28 by 40 foot 2-story office addition and replacement of salt shed and fuel storage areas for an existing industrial use. The proposal went before the design review committee, and the applicant incorporated their suggestions into the design of the project. Their comments have been submitted for the record. In addition, the applicant received variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals at their April 24th, 2020 meeting to allow 3 feet proposed side street setback and to allow 54% impervious surface coverage. A copy of the variance certificate is submitted for the record. With this variance, the proposal complies with the zoning code. Please refer to the staff report by Kevin McGee, environmental planner, dated for 2020 for details regarding stormwater management and impervious surface coverage and recommended conditions.
There's a letter from Dennis Johnson, Director of Health. Soil testing conducted on the applicant's property revealed suitable areas for installation of a code-complying septic system. The applicant's proposed salt shed, fuel storage enclosure, and office do not conflict with the location of the primary or reserve systems currently existing or proposed to be constructed on the lot. I think that's it, isn't it, Aaron? Do we have any more?
That's it.
So, Sean, do you want to take the proposed motion? Oh, hold on. From a procedural standpoint, George, do we close and then?
It's not a public hearing.
Not a public hearing.
Okay. Well, Sean, you want to grab the motion?
Yeah. Okay. Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a site plan application for Larking Pauline revocable trust for improvements at 43 driveway, map 33, lot 17 is shown on A&W salt shed and office 5 sheets prepared by CK Architects dated March 18th, 2020. And stormwater management plan 43 driveway prepared by Harkin Engineering dated 3/16/20. This application is approved with the following conditions. Number 1, see environmental planner comments.
Yeah, the 3 conditions from Kevin McGee.
Right. The application is approved based on a finding that with the variance granted, it conforms to the zoning code.
Good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I mean, I think it's an improvement. Nothing personal, Andrew. I think it'll look a lot better. It'll be great.
Look, there's nothing personal about that. There's no denying it's a huge improvement. Yeah, it is.
Any concerns from commissioners or any additional comments? Sean made a motion. Did someone second?
Richard.
I saw Matt was muted, but he made a second. So I'll call the vote. All in favor of the site plan approval for Larkins?
Aye.
Colleen Revocable Trust, 43 driveway. I'll do a roll call vote. Sorry. I gotta go back to my list. Sean Cosgrove,
Aye.
Richard Wallace,
Aye.
Scott Edmund,
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea,
Yes.
Jamie Stein.
Aye.
I will vote in favor of this as well. Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Very good. Have fun building.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Kick my dad off the Zoom meeting.
I got sick of looking at your dad from here up.
Yeah, I will say, I do want to say, Phil and Aaron, I think you guys did a great job, and it's a hell of a Zoom meeting conference for you guys with the fairgrounds and everything. But I was impressed, and I'm can't believe it took 2 hours to get here. But well done.
Welcome.
Well done.
There's a couple of spots open on the committee if you're interested.
I'm all set right now. Thank you very much, though, guys.
Take care, Andrew. Thanks, Russell.
Good night.
Regular meeting, pending applications. We're going to see Russ again. CK Architects on behalf, no, we just did
No,
that.
we just did that.
Okay. Vigliotti Construction, Long Hill Road, map 96. Redivision public hearing set for 5/20. Mark Knapp, 94 Great Harbor
Wait a minute,
Road.
that's not the right date.
Not 5/20?
Yes, it is.
5/20?
Yep.
Oh, 5/20, okay.
Yes.
I move to set it.
If you could.
It's already been moved.
Okay.
It's already been
Already
received.
said that.
This is just so you can keep track
You're
of.
gonna have to delineate because sometimes we have to do it and sometimes we don't.
No, okay.
Yeah,
And
that's
Town
right,
of Guilford, this is new application to be received. Town of Guilford Adams Middle School, 233 Church Street, map 53, lot 17, zone R1, site plan for construction of tennis courts, pickleball courts, and parking area improvements. Receive.
Yes, the new one, we're gonna have to receive it officially, right?
That's a receipt.
And we shall receive then. All in favor?
Aye.
Your hand.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Yay.
Do we have any correspondence, Jamie or Aaron?
Nope, we do not have any correspondence.
Okay. I know that I had asked Jamie to seek opinions with respect to officers for the upcoming year for planning and zoning. So I will kick it to her and let us know what she recommends.
Sure, thanks, Phil. So I did some due diligence, just reaching out to everyone through phone calls, and unanimously from those that I heard back from, there was an agreement that we would move forward and reappoint all of the existing officers.
Thank you. So would you like to make a motion to that effect?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint the existing officers.
Would anyone like to second?
Second.
Probably re-elect is the correct term.
Re-elect the existing officers.
Who are the existing officers?
I was going to say, could you refresh my memory?
Hold on. I actually have the power.
So I know this. So Phil is the
I
chair,
just muted George.
Richard is the vice chair, and Matt is the secretary.
I will say, it feels like we do this like every 6 months or something, but.
Well, we're supposed to do it at our first meeting in April, but
Okay. Didn't we do one, like a special one, because there was a change in regime or whatever, and we did like one midway through?
I don't recall.
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
In any event, so
Continue.
does someone want to second it?
I'll second it right away.
I'll do a quick roll call then. Sean, are you okay with that?
I am.
Thank you. Richard Wallace.
Yep.
Thank you for serving. Scott Edmund.
Yes.
Thank you for serving. Frank DeAndrea.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Jamie Stein.
Yes.
I will vote in favor of your slate. And Matt Yurzinski.
Yay.
Where's Matt? Yeah, you're good? You'll continue as secretary and do the read-in.
Great.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Do we have any bills to approve?
Nope.
No bills? With no further business, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, how about minutes from the April 15th?
Sorry, minutes. I did review the minutes and I believe them to be substantially correct. Would someone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Sean?
Aye.
Richard Wallace?
Yes.
Scott Edmund?
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea?
Yes.
Jamie Stein?
Yes.
I will also vote yes. And Matt Yurzinski?
I was absent, so I will abstain.
That's fine too. With no further business before the Planning and Zoning Commission, I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
All in favor.
Raise your hands.
How did
Bill,
this go longer than the last meeting?
Well, I
thought the last one was huge.
don't know.
Hey,
I
I just have to say thank you for all you do. And I'm on the losing end of the votes here, but I appreciate all your rigor.
Albert, you know,
Okay, having said that, spread the word.
we're not.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll work on
doing
that.
this for the money, Albert.
I know. I know none of you are doing it for the money, and I do some of the same in different places. But, nice job.
That's
Nice
not
job.
true. Aaron and I get paid.
Oh, there we go. Well,
We're
somebody
working
gets
on that,
paid.
George.
They don't compare, George.
All right, team. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Good night.